Chapter 1. In the 63rd year of De Wei's Qing Yuan, in the 3rd month of spring, the rain was drizzling. The new greenery in the city was shrouded in a layer of mist, soaking the land. The roof tiles of the Su family's residence in the capital were washed by the rain, revealing a layer of uniform luster. These were half-moon tiles shipped from Yunzhou. It was said that when moonlight shone on the roof, it would look like fireflies perched on the roof. The firing process of these tiles was complicated, and the price was not simple either. A full roof tile would cost an ordinary family dozens of years of hard work. However, the Su family in the capital had a silk business all over the country, so a roof tile was at most a drop in the bucket. Lord Su was the tutor of the current crown prince. He had 2 sons. The eldest, Su Zhiheng, stood alone. At a young age, he was already a Hanlin scholar, and everyone in the capital praised him. Su Zhiheng also had a wife. When he was 18, he married the daughter of the second master of the He family, He Yan. The eldest son of the He family, He Rufei, was the current emperor's general Fei Hong. The marriage between a scholar and a warrior could be considered a well-matched match. "Madam, what would you like?" A delicate maidservant in a thin gown handed her a cup of hot tea and asked crisply. "I'm going out for a walk," He Yan replied and drank the tea in one gulp. "But it's raining outside." "It's fine, I'll hold an umbrella." The maidservant looked at the young woman in front of her. The Su family was a scholarly family, and the women were all dressed elegantly. Young Mistress Su was the same. However, the green feather satin robe on her made her look petty and out of place. In fact, Grandmother Su was very good-looking. Her facial features were distinct and heroic, and her eyes were like a cleansed lake, clear and distant. Unfortunately, she was blind. Grandmother Su was not born blind. 3 months after marrying into the Su family, she suddenly contracted a strange illness. She had a high fever for 2 days and 2 nights, and when she woke up, she could no longer see. The Su family invited many divine doctors, but they were still helpless. After that, Grandmother Su did not go out often. It was inconvenient for a blind person to go out. He Yan walked to the pavilion by the pond in the courtyard. After marrying into the Su family for a year, she went blind after 3 months. In the remaining 9 months, she learned to live without her eyes and adapted very well. Occasionally, she would miss the days when she could see. For example, right now, she could hear the sound of rainwater falling into the pond and feel the red carps fighting for food in the pond, but she couldn't see anything. An unseen spring was a good spring, just like an unseen person. Perhaps she had gone blind too early, so she couldn't even remember Su Zhiheng's current appearance. The only thing she could remember was when she saw Su Zhiheng when she was 14 years old. The young man in green stretched out his hand to her with a warm smile. The current Su Zhiheng would not stretch out his hand to her. Although He Yan treated her gently and politely, there was a layer of something between them. He Yan could feel it. But she wouldn't say it. When she was young, she had spent many years in the military. She had learned to deal with men as a man, but she didn't know how to be a woman. Therefore, she could only watch Su Zhiheng and his concubine mother, Madame He, being gentle and affectionate. She felt sad and tired. She simply couldn't see it anymore. Even these heart-wrenching scenes were saved, so she had a lot of leisure time. She sat quietly in the pavilion. Suddenly, she remembered the years when she was young and the days when she followed the army. It was also a spring day like this. The rain was drizzling. She sat in the middle of the soldiers and drank a bowl of strong wine with a smile. She felt her whole body heat up. This heat engulfed her body in a flash. He Yan supported herself on the railing. Waves of sweetness gushed out from her throat. With a pu sound, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Someone's footsteps slowly approached. He Yan asked, "Shao Dai?" There was no answer. The footsteps stopped. He Yan frowned slightly. "Madam He." A moment later, a woman's voice sounded. "Madam has good hearing." A strange feeling rose in her chest. Her many years of intuition made her subconsciously take a defensive posture. Madam He had always been gentle and careful. She didn't say many words to her in the Fu. Suddenly, she came and spoke in such a proud tone. He Yen felt uneasy. But she also felt strange. She wasn't a competent mistress. In the Fu, she was more like a decoration. She couldn't stop Madam He from seeking favor. A blind person was no threat to Madam He. Madam He didn't need to and had no reason to deal with her. What's the matter? He Wanru stroked the hairpin in her hair. It was Su Jiheng who gave it to her yesterday. Suddenly, she remembered that the person in front of her couldn't see. She regretfully withdrew her hand and said, Madam, you are pregnant. He Yen froze in place. A few days ago, the doctor who looked at your eyes took your pulse. You are pregnant. He Yen didn't know what to do, but a trace of joy appeared. She was about to speak when she heard Madam He sigh again. What a pity. What a pity. He Yan's smile disappeared. She asked, what's a pity? It's a pity that this child can't be kept. He Yen said sternly, Madam He, how dare you? Her long, shapely eyebrows were raised, and her gaze was like a knife. Although she was blind, her expression was frightening. He Wanru's hair stood on end. But after a moment, she steadied her mind and said, I'm not the only one who said this, General He. He Yan's scalp went numb when she heard the words, General He. She asked, what do you know? I know everything that I should know. I also know everything that I shouldn't know. General He, with such a big secret, how can the He family and Su family dare to tolerate you? He Yan couldn't speak. Before the He family had a general like General Feihong, they were like all the noble families in Dewey. They were even on the verge of decline. 19 years ago, the He family's sisters-in-law gave birth at the same time. The He family's eldest young mistress gave birth to He Rufei, and the He family's second young mistress gave birth to He Yan. He Rufei should have the title of nobility, but He Rufei was born with a weak body. The doctor said that he wouldn't live past the age of 3. He Rufei died, and the title of nobility was taken away from the He family. The entire family was left with nothing. The He family discussed it and made a bold decision. He Yan replaced He Rufei. He Rufei lied that he was He Yan. He was born with a weak body and was sent to the temple to recuperate. He Yan grew up with He Rufei's identity. Although she was born in the second branch, she grew up in the first branch. Since she was young, she thought of herself as a boy and liked to practice martial arts. When she was 14, she joined the Fuyue army behind her family's back. Gradually, she became famous in the military campaigns. She even received the title of General Feihong from the emperor and had the opportunity to enter the palace to meet the emperor. It was at this time that He Rufei, who was sent to the temple to recuperate, returned. He Rufei didn't die. He even lived peacefully until he was 18 years old. He looked agile, healthy, and handsome. Thus, everything returned to its original state. He Rufei met the emperor and became General Feihong. He Yan was still He Yan. Everything wasn't as difficult as imagined. In order to prevent a situation like today's, the He family had long made a rule that He Yan would wear a mask and no one would see He Rufei's appearance. He Yan was arranged by the He family to marry the current Hanlin Academy scholar, the young talent Su Jiheng. Su Jiheng was handsome, gentle, considerate, and polite. His mother-in-law was also generous and never treated him harshly. For a woman, this was the best marriage. He Yan also used to think this way. Until today. Her mask of warmth was torn apart. The bloody truth was even more chilling than the most difficult battle she had ever faced on the battlefield. That bowl of soup that poisoned you was personally ordered by the elders of your family to send it over. Only the dead can keep secrets. As long as you're alive, you're a huge threat to them. When you were taking the medicine, eldest young master was watching from the room next door. If you died, the He family and the Su family would only be relieved. You only have yourself to blame. He Yen laughed loudly. Blame her? Blame her for what? Blame her for taking He Rufei's identity for the benefit of her family? Blame her for being obsessed with martial arts and learning to join the army? Should she be blamed for drinking blood on the battlefield and killing the enemy to the bitter end? Or blame her for kissing His Majesty and being bestowed the title of General Feihong and letting He Rufei receive her meritorious service? Blame her. Blame her for being a woman. Because she was a woman, she couldn't use her own name to make achievements openly. Because she was a woman, she deserved to pave the way for the He family and the men of the He family. In the end, she overestimated the He family's humanity and underestimated the He family's selfishness. And Su Jiheng. She should have been blind a long time ago to think that he was good. What are you laughing at? He Wanru frowned and asked. I'm laughing at you. He Yen looked in her direction and said word by word, I'm laughing at how ridiculous you are. I died because of a secret. Do you think you can still live after knowing this secret? He Wanru sneered, you're about to die and you're still so stubborn. Guards quickly appeared and surrounded He Yen. Kill her. Willow branches could be used as weapons. They were soft and tough, just like a woman's hand. They were clearly light branches with new shoots on them. They were like a sword embroidered with flowers and could brush away the opponent's sword. He Wanru had also heard of General Feihong's name. She knew that the woman was brave and good at fighting and didn't seem like an ordinary girl. But only when she saw it with her own eyes did she know that the rumors were true. He Yen was already blind, but she could still fight against 10. She kicked away the guards in front of her, as if she wanted to break through the encirclement in this gloomy house and ride her horse back. No one could stop her. But suddenly, she fell from the air like a wild goose shot by an arrow. The blood she spat out splashed on the grass like little wildflowers. That cup of tea, the cup of tea that Xiao Dai handed to her. She lost her sight and now even her 5 senses. She was truly a blind person, a cornered beast. In order to kill her, they really made foolproof preparations. A bunch of idiots. Now, He Wanru said anxiously. He Yen wanted to raise her head. Bang! She felt a sharp pain in her knee. The person behind her hit her leg heavily. Her legs went soft and she almost knelt down. But in the next moment, she was punched in the back again. The fists fell in disorder and hit her body like raindrops. Her internal organs hurt. They wouldn't hurt her with a sword or leave a trace of evidence on her body. Someone pulled her hair and dragged her to the edge of the pond. Her head was pushed down violently. The cold water went over her eyes, nose, mouth, and neck. He Yen couldn't speak anymore. Her body fell heavily, but she struggled to look up. The water was getting farther and farther away from her. The sky was like the sunlight. For a moment, she felt like she had returned to her hometown. She vaguely heard the songs sung during the march. Her companions read letters home in their local accent, accompanied by Madame He's panicked crying. Guards, Madame is drowning, she wanted to go home. But she was homeless. Chapter 2. The spring rain seemed to have no end as it continued to fall. However, the room was very warm. The fire in the stove burned brightly. The lid of the boiling medicine pot was pushed up by the steam, and one could clearly hear the gurgling sound of the pot. The girl sat in front of the mirror. In the bronze mirror, a slightly pale face appeared. She had long frowns on her face, thin green and red. Her lips were like small water chestnuts, pursed, delicate and pretty. Her pair of almond-shaped eyes were black and moist, like a mountain stream that was about to gather mist in the next moment. The mist slowly dispersed, revealing a magnificent gem. She had snow-white skin and a flower-like appearance. She was a beautiful girl, but that was all there was to it. Of course, she knew her own beauty very well. Therefore, in front of the small dressing table, there was already rouge, face powder, and spice balm. The smell of the rouge lingered around her. Yen wrinkled her nose and couldn't help but sneeze. The bronze mirror was immediately covered with a layer of white frost from the hot breath she exhaled. Even her face became unclear. Yen was in a trance for a moment, as if she had returned to the moment when she first took off her male disguise. She also sat in front of the mirror like this, looking at herself in the mirror as if a lifetime had passed. She had been drowned in the Su family's pond by the He family's men. However, when she woke up, she had become Yen. She wasn't the current General Feihong, He Rufei's younger sister, Su Zhiheng's wife, Yen. Instead, she was the owner of this dilapidated house, the 9th-ranked military officer of the city gate, He Sui's eldest daughter, Yen. They were both Yen. Their statuses were as different as clouds and mud. Yen, why didn't you say you were awake? Accompanied by a voice from outside, the door curtain was lifted and a figure swept in with a cold wind. It was a middle-aged man with sideburns. He had a square face, dark skin, and a tall figure. He looked like a clumsy but strong bear. His smile carried a trace of cautiousness. Seeing that there was no one in the room, he shouted loudly, "Qing Mei, where's Qing Mei?" "Qing Mei went to pick medicinal herbs," Yen said softly. The man scratched his head and said, "Oh, then Daddy will pour it for you." The white porcelain bowl was not even as big as the man's palm. He knew this, so he poured the medicine very carefully. The room was immediately filled with the bitter fragrance of the herbs. Yen looked at the plum blossoms on the side of the medicine bowl and shifted his gaze to the man's face. This was Yen's father, the captain of the city gate, He Sui. The word father was unfamiliar to Yen. Her biological father should be the second master of the He family, He Yuanliang. However, because she had taken on the identity of He Rufei, she could only call He Yuanliang's second uncle. Her adoptive father, He Yuansheng, was actually her uncle. The relationship between her adoptive father and her wasn't very close. When she first proposed to learn martial arts, their relationship had dropped to the freezing point. It was only after she earned merits and received the emperor's commendation that she became enthusiastic. In the past few years, although the first branch didn't deprive her of food and drink, they didn't really understand what she was thinking. When Yen was young, she thought it was because he wasn't her biological father. However, her biological father, He Yuanliang, also treated her indifferently. It was probably because a daughter that was given away was like water that was spilled. Since he didn't raise her by his side, their relationship faded. Therefore, Yen didn't remember her father's appearance as clearly as her brothers and subordinates. He Sui had already poured the medicine into the bowl. He carefully scooped up the residue floating on the surface of the water and gently blew on it. He brought it to Yen and was about to feed her. Yen took the bowl of medicine and said, "I'll do it myself." The man withdrew his hand and said embarrassedly, "Okay." Niao steam rose from the medicine bowl. Yen looked at the bowl of medicine in front of her hesitantly. She thought of what Madam He said before she died. That bowl of medicine that blinded you was personally sent by an elder in your family. The elder in the family, was it He Yuansheng? Or He Yuanliang? Or was it someone else? Su Zhiheng knew about it. What about the others? She thought of the day she drowned and the cup of hot tea that Xiao Dai gave her. Who knew if the things sent by others had ulterior motives? He Sui saw that she didn't drink it and thought that she thought the medicine was too bitter. He smiled and coaxed her, Yen, don't be afraid. It's not bitter. You'll be fine after drinking the medicine." Yen didn't hesitate anymore. Before He Sui could continue speaking, she put her lips to the bowl and poured the medicine into her mouth. "Wait." He Sui didn't have time to say anything. Yen had already put the empty bowl on the table. He spat out the remaining words in his mouth, "It's hot, it's not hot." Yen answered. He Sui didn't know what to say for a while. He stammered a few times and whispered, "Then you should rest well in the room. Don't run around. Father will go to the martial arts field first." He took the empty bowl away. He Yen was left alone in the room. She was slightly relieved. After all, she wasn't used to communicating with people so intimately, especially as a woman. Moreover, she was a young girl who was pampered and raised in the palm of his hand. His servant Ching Mei hadn't come back yet. He Sui didn't have a lot of money every month. The captain of the gate guards was just a military officer with no real power. He didn't have much money. The people in this room relied on He Sui's money to support themselves. He could only afford to hire one servant. The rest of the money probably became the rouge and face powder that Miss He piled up on the table. He Yen stood up and walked to the door. This body was soft, like white jade, fragrant and tender. It was completely unfamiliar to her. Without strength, she couldn't protect herself. If there was something special about this body, it would be a pair of clean and bright eyes. It could let her see the light of the world that she hadn't seen for a long time. Dong! There was the sound of something heavy falling behind her. He Yen turned around and saw a young man standing in front of her. He was removing the firewood that was tied to his shoulders. The young man was young, about the same age as He Yen. He wore a green waistline shirt and pants of the same color. There was a white cloth tied around his legs to make it easier for him to work. His skin was slightly dark. His eyebrows and eyes were similar to He Yan's. He was delicate and handsome, but his chin was slightly narrower. He looked determined and stubborn. This was Lady He's younger brother, He Sui's youngest son, He Yunsheng. He Yen had been lying in bed for the past few days. He Yunsheng came several times, but he always came to bring water and the stove. He didn't say a word to He Yen. The relationship between the brother and sister didn't seem to be very good, but He Yen looked at He Yunsheng's rough and ill-fitting clothes and then looked at her own little green satin dress. She slightly understood, but was also surprised. In the He family, the women paved the way for the men. The men were the sky and the earth, as if they were the center of the world. However, in this family, it was different. It seemed that this biological youngest son was picked up. The He family only cared about Lady He's food and clothes. Why was this? He Yen stood in front of He Yunsheng and didn't move a step. He Yunsheng piled the firewood under the eaves and began to chop the firewood. This family was really poor. The only servant was a maid, and the biological son did the work of a manservant. In front of He Yen was the pile of firewood. He Yunsheng chopped it twice and slightly frowned. "Excuse me, you are blocking my way." He didn't even call her sister. He Yen didn't move at all. He didn't move aside, nor did he taunt him with his usual sarcastic remarks. He Yunsheng couldn't help but raise his head and meet He Yan's serious eyes. He Yen said, "You can't chop the firewood like this." Chapter 3. He Yunsheng furrowed his brows and asked, "What did you say?" He Yen didn't move and repeated seriously, "I said, you can't chop the firewood like this." The youth became impatient. "He Yen, if you're sick then go back to your room. Don't look for trouble here. If you chop like this, you won't be able to finish even when the sky turns dark." He Yen didn't move an inch. He Yunsheng seemed to suddenly become angry. The axe slipped out of his hand and heavily hit the bluestone floor, making a loud noise. He took a step forward and angrily said, "If you didn't spend money because of your illness, father wouldn't have sent the manservant away. You still know that you have to chop until the sky turns dark. If you haven't chopped firewood before, then don't point fingers. If you're so good at chopping, then do it." He Yan's heart slightly moved. So there was a manservant at home. It was just that the family was poor and in order to see a doctor, they sent the manservant away. This youth took over the manservant's job. Looking at his appearance, he seemed to have accumulated resentment towards this elder sister for a long time. He sneered and ridiculed her without any mercy. being poor also had its advantages. For example, there was no one in the courtyard, so the embarrassing scene between this pair of siblings would not be seen by others. If it was in the He family and Su family in the past, the maidservants who came to watch the show would probably form a troop of soldiers and horses. After He Yunqing finished speaking, he waited for He Yan to jump up and scold her. However, to his surprise, He Yan didn't scold her this time. Instead, she bent down and picked up the axe that he threw on the ground. She was dropped by the heavy axe. Her slender wrist seemed to be unable to withstand the destruction. It was a frightening sight. He Yan looked at her hand and frowned slightly. She couldn't even lift the axe. Compared to her past self, she was far worse. He Yunqing was stunned and suspiciously asked, "What are you doing?" "I'll chop it for you to see." He Yan replied. When He Yunqing heard this, he became even angrier and angrily said, "Don't pester endlessly, you." Before he could finish his words, a bang sound interrupted his voice. He Yan had already raised the axe and cleanly chopped the firewood in front of him into two. "Look," she said, "it's very simple. You can't hold the front end of the axe. You have to hold the end of the handle and chop along the lines of the wood. It'll save a lot of energy." He Yunqing stared at her blankly. After a while, the young man's face turned red and his tone was almost angry. He pointed at He Yan and said, You really have ulterior motives. Your hand. Father will definitely scold me when he comes back. He Yan, you're really scheming, crafty and treacherous." "Huh?" He Yan didn't understand. The next moment, a panicked female voice sounded, "Miss, you're bleeding." He Yan subconsciously lowered his head and looked at his palm. He didn't know when the skin on his palm had been scraped. Blood was reflected in his palm. It was so fresh that it was even a little moving. She had only used the axe to chop a piece of firewood, and she had already scraped her hand. Just how delicate was this body? Since he was young, had Lady He ever carried anything that was slightly heavier? Was she made of cotton and tofu? He Yan fell into deep thought. The maidservant, Qing Mei, had already rushed over and pulled him into the room. She hurriedly said, "You have to rub it with ointment first." "I don't know if it will leave a scar." He Yunqing glared at her hatefully and said, "He Yan, you're going to court death sooner or later." Then he turned around and ran away. He Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In her previous life, she had lived from her marriage to her death. Until now, this was the first time someone had said that she was courting. This feeling was very novel. In the hearts of soldiers, courting was probably a very distant word. Qing Mei placed He Yan's hand on her knee and used her fingertips to gently rub the ointment onto He Yan's palm. After that, she cried again. "What if it leaves a scar? We have to find a way to get some scar removal ointment." "It's okay." He Yan couldn't bear to see a girl cry, especially a beautiful girl who was 15 or 16 years old. She was younger than he was in his previous life. He comforted her. "If it leaves a scar, it'll leave a scar. It's fine as long as it's healed." Qing Mei widened her eyes and forgot to wipe her tears. She stared at He Yan speechlessly. "What's wrong?" He Yan asked. "No, nothing." Qing Mei wiped her tears and stood up. "As long as you're not angry, it's fine." The tone of her words. He Yan looked at the cosmetics and jewelry placed in front of the dressing table. He roughly understood what was going on. In his previous life, Lady He was very particular about her appearance. Her delicate skin must have been pampered. It would be a big deal if she accidentally broke it. Did the heavens see that her previous life was too rough and had never experienced the feeling of being a daughter? In this life, they gave her such a delicate body that couldn't even withstand the wind and rain. Qing Mei asked, "Young lady, let this servant pour you a cup of hot tea. It was raining outside just now and you've caught a cold." "Wait." He Yan stopped her. "I remembered something." When I woke up earlier, there were some things that I couldn't remember clearly. She looked at Qing Mei. How did I get sick? Originally, there was a manservant in this house. Later, the manservant who came to treat He Yan's illness was sent away. It could be seen that this illness wasn't present at birth. But if it was a sudden illness, she didn't feel any discomfort these past few days. Everyone in the house looked at her carefully, as if they were afraid of any accidents. He Yan felt strange. Qing Mei heard this and turned pale with fright. She grabbed He Yan's hand and almost cried again. Young lady, you've already been sad for Master Fan. You can't go through this again. Even if it's not for yourself, you have to think about Master and young Master. Master Fan? Man? He Yan asked, which Master Fan? Young lady, what do you mean by that? Yes, Master Fan is so heartless. He's not a good match. Young lady, you're right to forget him. This servant won't mention Master Fan again. I just want young lady to be well. Qing Mei finished speaking and wiped her eyes again. This little maid really loved to cry too much. Even the new recruits under her tent didn't cry so much on their first time on the battlefield. She hadn't asked much, but her lapel was already wet. If this continued, in less than the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the water would flood Jinshan Mountain. Fine, He Yan said helplessly. Then let's not talk about it. Go and change your clothes. Your clothes are wet. Qing Mei stared at He Yan with wide eyes. She saw that He Yan was calm and didn't look like he was about to collapse. She hesitated for a moment and said, then this servant will go and change. Young lady, please wait for this servant. This servant will be right back. Then she walked away, looking back every few steps. The house became quiet again. He Yan stretched out his hand and opened his palm. Qing Mei's ointment was still in her hand. She looked at her delicate hand, lost in thought. Women were naturally weaker than men. In order to practice hand strength, He Yan used to sneak out of the manor's back door every day before dawn and climb up Dongwang Mountain in the capital to help the monks carry water and chop firewood. In the beginning, the skin on her hands was also worn out like this. Gradually, calluses grew on her hands, and she was able to carry 2 buckets of water with ease. She could even practice martial arts with Tu hanging from her wrists. She wasn't smart, so she could only use stupid methods. Over time, she also gained the qualifications to compete with men. But now, everything was back to square one. Not to mention taking away what originally belonged to her, her weak body couldn't bear the brunt of the thorny road she had to walk in the future. Then let's practice, He Yan said to herself. Just like before. Perhaps this was a test given to her by heaven as the price for her rebirth. But there was nothing to be afraid of. She was just starting all over again. Chapter 4. The next day, the rain stopped and it was a beautiful sunny day. The bluestone in the courtyard was warm from the sun and had a lush green color. He Yan woke up when the rooster crowed for the 3rd time. When Qing Mei woke up, she found He Yan was not in bed and was shocked. She looked around and found He Yan sitting on the stone block in the courtyard in a daze. She was relieved. Miss, why are you up so early? Is it because the quilt is too thin and cold? Qing Mei asked. It's nothing, I can't sleep. He Yan replied. She did not have the habit of being lazy. In the military camp, she could not relax for even a moment. Even at night, she had to be on guard against the enemy's surprise attack, so she was always alert. Moreover, she wanted to practice martial arts when she was young, so she really did dance at the sound of the rooster. Later, when she married into the Su family, she still could not change her old habits and was ridiculed behind her back. However, after she became blind, she did not wake up so early. There was no difference between day and night to her. She still woke up when the rooster crowed, but she would wait until everyone in the courtyard had woken up before she followed. She wanted to make herself feel less out of place. Where is father? she asked. Master has already gone to the military field. Young master has also just woken up. Miss, change your clothes and come eat. Qing Mei said and trotted to the kitchen. There was only one servant in the house, but there was a lot of work. There were always times when there was not enough manpower. When He Yan arrived at the hall, He Yunsheng had already sat down at the table and started eating. The young man was the same as yesterday. He was dressed like a peddler and was very careless. When he saw He Yan, he only took a glance and then looked away. He picked up the bowl and drank the porridge. The meal was simple porridge and side dishes. With the He family's financial situation, they could not afford to eat any exquisite dishes. Even so, there was a plate of desserts on the table. They did not look very exquisite and the aroma was coarse. He Sui specially prepared them for his daughter. He Yan also picked up the bowl and drank the porridge. She drank it very quickly. Qing Mei and He Yunsheng were slightly surprised. In the past, He Yan was picky and refused to eat properly. In the end, he would reluctantly eat a bowl of porridge and only finish it after a long time. After finishing the porridge, she didn't immediately reach for the desserts on the plate. He Sui prepared them for her. Qing Mei wouldn't eat them, let alone He Yunsheng. He Yunsheng put the bowl on the table and stood up. He Yan looked up and asked, "Where are you going?" He Yunsheng frowned, "What?" Just as he was about to speak impatiently, his gaze suddenly caught a glimpse of the mark on He Yan's palm. His tone paused. He thought that He Yan would complain to He Sui when she returned home yesterday. Who knew that everything was calm this morning? It seemed that He Yan did not go to sow discord. He Sui still did not know that He Yan was injured. The young man's tone softened a little, "I'm going up the mountain to chop firewood." In He Yunsheng's mind, He Yan, who heard this sentence, should leave with no interest and go back to her room to fiddle with her rouge and face powder. Then, she should dress up and go out for a walk. Who knew that He Yan's eyes lit up and said excitedly, "Really? I'll go too." Before He Yunsheng could speak, Qing Mei spoke first, "Miss, what are you going to do? It rained on the mountain and the road is not easy to walk on. There's mud everywhere. What if you fall?" "That's right." It was rare that there was a normal person in the room. He Yunsheng immediately added, "Don't look for trouble." Both of them thought that He Yan was just being impulsive. He Yan turned to Qing Mei and said, "Father is at the martial arts field during the day and only comes home at night. Qing Mei, you have so much work to do. You can't follow me all the time." He Yunsheng. She called He Yunsheng by his name, which made He Yunsheng quiver. "If you don't take me, I'll go by myself." "Hey!" He Yunsheng said angrily. "Is there a third person in this room who can control me?" She asked calmly. He Yunsheng was speechless. No one in this room could control He Yan's temper, let alone a third person. Because of He Sui's pampering, He Yan did not listen to anyone. "Oh, except for that young master Fan. If you want to go, then go with me." The young man said angrily, "But if you fall on the way and cry and want to go home, I won't send you back." He Yan shrugged. He Yunsheng left angrily. He could not understand why He Yan had become so annoying after being sick. He Yan used to have a pretentious temper, but now He Yan had a trace of rashness, which made her even more difficult to deal with. She really was He Yunsheng's enemy. Long Huan Peak's mountain path was rugged and the terrain was dangerous. Most of the people who came here were poor people who chopped firewood and gathered herbs. Unknown wildflowers grew on the side of the road, which were reflected in the grass. It was very beautiful. But after all, it was not a place to go for a walk and admire the flowers. The sure too under his feet was stuck to the cliff. Looking down, it made his legs tremble. He Yunsheng had walked this path countless times and knew that it was not easy to climb up the mountain. He waited to hear He Yan's complaints and cries, but from beginning to end, He Yan did not make a sound. He Yunsheng could not help but turn his head. He was surprised to find that He Yen was not far behind him. They were almost walking shoulder to shoulder. How was this possible? Even a man would find it difficult to walk this path, not to mention He Yen was a delicate young lady. In the past, when she walked far away, she had to rub her knees. When did she have such good stamina? Why are you looking at me? He Yen stared at him strangely. Aren't you going to continue walking? He Yunxing did not say anything and turned back to continue walking. She must be faking it. She must not be able to hold on any longer. He Yen looked at her legs and sighed. The strength in her legs was really weak. After walking with He Yunxing for such a long time, she actually felt tired. It seemed that they still needed some time to break in. It's fine here. He Yunxing stopped and took the axe from his waist. There were a lot of miscellaneous trees here. He Yunxing chose small trees, which were more convenient to chop. He pointed to Shi Tu next to He Yen. You can sit here for a while. I need to chop for 2 hours. Right here. He Yen nodded and took down the cloth bag she was carrying. He Yunxing stared blankly as she took out an axe from her cloth bag. You. What are you doing? He Yunxing's mind went blank and he could not speak clearly. He thought that He Yan's cloth bag contained a water bottle. Who knew that she had an axe in her bag? She carried an axe on her back and walked such a long distance. Moreover, she was not left behind by him. He Yunxing suspected that he was dreaming. What happened next made He Yunxing even more certain that he was dreaming. He saw his delicate older sister. He Yen, who usually felt that a teacup was too heavy for her, pick up the axe in front of her without hesitation. With one chop, she chopped down a bunch of branches. Her movements were so nimble that it was as if she had done it 1,000 times. She said, "Let me help you. It'll be quick." Chapter 5. He Yunxing always felt that his dream was a little too long. His sister followed him up the mountain early in the morning and chopped some firewood. Finally, she took out some snacks from her cloth bag and gave him one. He Yunxing wanted to refuse, but the sweet and greasy aroma filled the tip of his nose. He Yen had already lowered his head to bite into his own share. Unexpectedly, He Yunxing reached out and took it. He took a bite. The sweet taste was unfamiliar to him. He Sui was very biased. She gave all the delicious food to He Yen, but He Yen was not a person who liked to share. He Yen saw that he ate very slowly, so she stuffed the rest of the snacks into his hands and said, "You can have the rest. I'm full." He Yunxing did not know what to do. He and his sister were the only 2 people in the He family. He Sui was just an armed escort who came to the capital to deliver goods. On the way, he happened to be robbed by mountain bandits. He saved the young miss of the capital's scholar's mansion and married happily. The scholar's family only had one young miss. He Sui did not have any parents, so he voluntarily became the son-in-law of the family. Although he was the son-in-law of the family, his son and daughter still followed their husband's surname. Later, the scholar and his wife died one after another. Madam He was depressed all day. When He Yunxing was 3 years old, Madam He passed away. The 3 of them depended on each other for survival. He Sui and his wife were deeply in love. He Yen looked very much like Madam He. Probably because of this, He Sui loved He Yen very much. Although the He family was not rich, He Sui always tried her best to satisfy He Yen's needs. Over time, He Yen also became an annoying person. At least, He Yunxing could not love this sister of his. But since she fell ill, many of her actions had become unimaginable. He Yunxing didn't know how to face her. "You go up the mountain to chop firewood every day?" He Yen asked him, "What do you do in the afternoon? Don't you go to school?" He Yunxing was only 1 year younger than He Yen. He was 15 this year. Children at this age should still be in school. "When we get back, we'll make a large cake and sell it in the shed in the afternoon. Forget about the school." He Yunxing casually said, "We don't have money at home, and I'm not cut out for that. I can just read a few words." Although he tried to hide it, He Yan could still see a trace of regret and longing in the boy's eyes. After a pause, she asked, "What do you want to do in the future?" "Why do you ask?" He Yunxing was suspicious, but after a moment, he still answered He Yan's question. "Now I go to the martial arts arena every day. In the future, as long as I pass the academy examinations, I will be able to enter the city's garrison army and slowly become a lieutenant. Then I will be able to earn some silver." "That's it?" He Yan laughed. "I thought you would want to do something else." "How can I do something else?" He Yunxing mocked himself. "Don't tell me I'm going to be like General Fei Hong. We both have the same surname, but he's much more powerful than us." Suddenly hearing his name from He Yunxing's mouth, He Yan froze for a moment. She was silent for a moment before asking, "You know General Fei Hong?" "Of course I know. Who doesn't know in Dawei? That year General Fei Hong conquered the western Chang, General Feng Yun conquered the southern barbarians, northern He and southern Shao. That's why our Dawei was at peace. Young men are chivalrous and high-spirited. If I can become a person like them, even if I die, it's worth it." He Yan laughed out loud. He Yunxing was flustered and exasperated. "What are you laughing at? But just chopping firewood and selling large cake, you can't become a person like them. That year General Fei Hong and General Feng Yun weren't people who could be successful just by casually learning in the martial arts arena." "Of course I know." He Yunxing's face turned red, but which young man didn't want to make a name for themselves? He Yunxing was at the age where he was hot-blooded. Moreover, the current situation was really holding him back. He Yan said, "From tomorrow onwards, I'll go with you to the mountains every day to chop firewood and sell large cake." "What?" He Yunxing jumped up from the chair too. "He Yan, are you crazy? Today's matter could be said to be a spur-of-the-moment thing. If she came every day..." He Yan was afraid that her brain was damaged because of her illness. Without waiting for He Yunxing to speak, He Yan had already stood up and patted the dust off her body. "Since you're done eating, let's continue working. Spring waits for no one." He Yunxing, after the spring rain, it was sunny for more than 10 days. Recently, Qing Mei had something on her mind. In the past, eldest miss always ordered her to do this and that. Eldest miss, who made her serve her personally, didn't look for her anymore. During the day, she went out with He Yunxing. At night, when Qing Mei wanted to help He Yan freshen up, He Yan also sent her out. The only thing she could do was to get up in the morning to comb He Yan's hair. Qing Mei was sick at heart with worry. If this went on, would she also be kicked out of the house like those manservants who were sent away by He Sui? After all, eldest miss didn't need her anymore. He Yunxing also had a lot on his mind. For more than half a month, He Yan went to Longhuan Peak with him every morning to chop firewood. Unexpectedly, she woke up earlier than him. He Yan went up the mountain and tied a sandbag to her hands and feet. He Yunxing secretly weighed it. It was very heavy. He Yan carried such a thing every day and went up the mountain with him to chop firewood. She didn't complain at all. It was as if she didn't know what tiredness was. However, He Yunxing saw that the delicate skin of her palms had been abraded many times. She simply wrapped a cloth around her hands. The benefits of doing this were obvious. After half a month, He Yan walked faster than him and chopped more firewood than him. He Yunxing wondered if the sandbag was really so magical. Should he secretly tie 2 sandbags? 2 people chopping firewood was faster than 1 person chopping firewood. The extra time could be used to sell more cakes. He Yan was a woman after all. It wasn't good for her to make a living in public. He Yunxing also reminded her, but He Yan didn't care at all. He Yunxing felt a headache coming on. If He Sui knew that He Yan had been with him these days, either chopping firewood in the mountains or going out to sell cakes, he would definitely whip him. Fortunately, He Sui didn't know. Not only did He Sui not know, but he was happy every day. His son and daughter, who used to quarrel endlessly, were much closer recently. They could sit at the same table and eat together. Sometimes, they would even chat. He Sui was very satisfied. He was much kinder to the new soldiers on the school field. After all, everything would prosper if the family lived in harmony. At this moment, He Yen was sitting in front of the dressing table. Qing Mei looked at her anxiously. Ever since He Yen recovered from her illness, she didn't like to look in the mirror. She also didn't like to fiddle with her rouge and face powder. Now that she was fiddling with it again, Qing Mei was a little nervous. Recently, the household's expenses were very poor. He Yen wanted to buy new lipstick at this time, but she didn't have the money. He Yen flipped through the face powder on the table and felt a headache coming on. These things had already been used. They couldn't be sold for money. She flipped through a few more times and found a few hairpins and jewelry. They were all made of silver and the quality was average. They were not as good as the ones she used to wear in the Su family. However, she didn't care so much now. She found all the jewelry and handed them to Qing Mei. Take these to the pawn shop and pawn them. Pawn them until you die. You'll get more money. Qing Mei's eyes widened. But, we're very poor now. He Yen explained to her earnestly. These can't be eaten. She had to pawn the jewelry and get some money. It would be best if she could get enough money for He Yunsheng to go to school. Since she had taken over Lady He's body, she should at least do something for the He family. After she took care of these things, she could do her own things with peace of mind. For example, she could settle an old debt. Chapter 6. When they went out, He Yunsheng asked, "Why are you so late today? You won't be able to get a good seat later." "I have something to do." He Yen said, "It's okay if you can't get a good seat. Our cakes are better." He Yunsheng was speechless. He felt that talking to He Yen now was like punching cotton, making it hard for him to vent his anger. He Yen didn't lose her temper and was in a relaxed mood. He Yunsheng didn't know if she was optimistic or stupid. At least, he hadn't seen He Yen in a long time. The shed was set up on a street in the west of the city. Opposite was the capital's largest restaurant, Zueyu Court. Guests came and went, and the small business here was very good. But the shed was only so big, so they had to go there early to get a good seat. He Yunsheng took out the big cake from the steamer. Denai cake was a kind of pastry. It was made of peeled and pitted raw plums, blanched with white plum and licorice soup, and then filled with honey, pine nuts, olive kernels, walnut kernels, and melon kernels. It was put into a small steamer and steamed until it was ripe. It was sour and sweet, very delicious, and not expensive. He Yunsheng came to sell the big cake, and he could make money every month to support his family. The sun was warm and comfortable, and people came to buy one or two from time to time. By the time the sun turned to the east of Zueyu Court, they would probably be sold out. He Yen watched He Yunsheng work. He Yunsheng was very capable, and it reminded her of the children in the army camp. Most of the children in the army camp were from poor families, and the young masters of rich families were not willing to let them go to war. Those poor children went to war just for a bite to eat. So before that, they did all kinds of work, and they could do anything. Although she had never been poor, she had been through it. "Hey, give me one. Isn't this Lady He?" A voice interrupted He Yan's thoughts. She looked up and saw a long-faced man in front of her. His hair was combed into a shiny bun, and he had the head of a deer and the eyes of a mouse. He was dressed in white, but he was neither fish nor fowl. He raised his hand and was about to put it on He Yan's shoulder, but He Yan dodged to the side. The man missed and regretfully retracted his hand, saying, "Lady He, long time no see. You didn't go out much these days. So you're here to sell cakes with young Master He. How can you do this kind of thing? It's hard." His tone made it sound like they were close. He Yan didn't understand and looked at He Yunsheng. He Yunsheng's face was filled with anger as he reprimanded, Wang Jiugui, stay away from my sister. Brat, your sister doesn't mind. You. Well, I bought some rouge a few days ago and wanted to give it to you. Since I happened to meet you today, I want to give it to you. I wonder if you would do me the honor of going to the Sisui River with me. He Yan wanted to laugh at a person who looked like a beggar trying to act like an elegant young master. She had met many people in her 2 lives, both good and bad. But no one dared to tease her like this. I want to sell cakes. I may not be able to go for a walk with you. He Yan tactfully declined. You should give this rouge to someone else. Wang Jiugui was stunned. He lived on the same street as the He family. He Yan's father was a military officer, so others didn't dare to provoke her. But He Yan wasn't a girl who knew her place, and she liked to take advantage of little things. Usually, if he gave her some rouge and powder, she would call him Brother Jiugui. Today, in front of so many people, he was slapped in the face. Wang Jiugui was embarrassed. His smile wasn't as sincere as before. Lady, he can't still be thinking about young Master Fan, right? Young Master Fan is about to get married. Why do you, shut up. Before he could finish his words, Wang Jiugui felt a punch on his face and fell to the ground with a thud. He Yunsheng stood in front of him and pointed to the distance. Get out of here, she said angrily. The 14 or 15-year-old boy was like a half-grown calf, full of strength. Wang Jiugui had been hollowed out by wine and women. He was no match for He Yunsheng. His head hurt, his face hurt, and his whole body was flustered. He scrambled to his feet and looked at He Yan. She didn't seem to have any intention of apologizing. In fact, she seemed to be interested. Suddenly, a nameless anger surged in his heart. You. He pointed at He Yan with a trembling finger. He Yunsheng stood in front of He Yan and sneered. What's wrong with us? Wang Jiugui didn't dare to step forward. He had some doubts in his heart. The relationship between these 2 siblings had never been good. He Yan always complained to him. He Yunsheng also never cared about He Yan's matters. Why were these 2 together today? He Yunsheng even stood up for He Yan. Just you wait. He stomped his feet and ran away. The crowd dispersed and the shed returned to its original calm. He Yunsheng put away the big cake with a gloomy face and didn't say a word. He Yan looked at him. What are you looking at? He Yunsheng asked angrily. You did a good job just now. He Yan pondered for a moment. It's just that your lower body is a little unstable. Your basic skills aren't very solid. You still need to practice your horse stance at home. Go away. He Yunsheng didn't want to talk about it. You're not a martial arts instructor. He Yan looked at He Yunsheng. He Yunsheng was a promising talent. Perhaps it was because he had worked hard since he was young and had a good foundation. Compared to the young masters of the He family, He Yunsheng was a good seedling. He shouldn't have bought the big cake here. He should have gone to a better martial arts school to learn his skills. Then let me rephrase. Who is Master Fan? He Yunsheng slammed his handkerchief on the table and glared at her. You still dare to say it? What's wrong with Master Fan? He Yan glanced at him. He Yunsheng mentioned Master Fan as if he was extremely angry. What's wrong? If he didn't provoke you first, you wouldn't have been fooled by him. That kind of young master is a womanizer. You're the only one who would believe him. He's about to get married, and you're still going on a hunger strike for him. You're dying for him, but he's still marrying someone new. You, on the other hand, have become a joke in the capital and you still mention him. Are you trying to anger me to death? With just a few words, He Yan roughly understood what was going on. Lady, he was spoiled since she was young. How could she raise a peony in a clay basin? She wholeheartedly wanted to marry into a noble family and become a noble lady. By chance, she met a young master from a noble family. The 2 of them secretly fell in love. However, Lady He gave her heart to the other party, but the other party was just fooling around. A young master from a noble family would never marry the daughter of a military official. Master Fan's family had already found a suitable match for him and was about to get married. How could Lady He let it go? She personally went to ask for an explanation, but was mercilessly kicked out. She couldn't accept it and wanted to commit suicide by hunger strike. Just as she was about to die, He Yen woke up and replaced Lady He. It was no wonder that after He Yen woke up, everyone in the He family treated her with caution. They were afraid that she would accidentally commit suicide again. He Yunsheng was still talking endlessly, scolding He Yen for not being clear-headed. He didn't know that his real sister had long passed away. He Yen wrung her hands in her heart. Lady He shouldn't have ruined her life for a liar. Life was very precious. It was a waste to give it to someone who wasn't worth it. Moreover, if she passed away like this, the person who betrayed her would still live freely, but the person who truly loved her would be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. What was the point of hurting her loved ones and making her enemies happy? Her experience was somewhat similar to Lady He's. They both had bad relationships, but she was different from Lady He. He Yuansheng, He Yuanliang, He Rufei, Su Zhiheng, and He Wanru. She would personally visit them one by one and take back what they owed her. For this, she had done a lot of work. Every morning, she would walk with a sandbag tied to her body in order to regain her strength. Every afternoon, she would sell goods in the marketplace so that she could inquire about the He family and the Su family from all kinds of people. For example, the blind Madame Su had accidentally fallen into the water and drowned a few days ago. The first master of the Su family was inconsolable and bedridden. The entire He family was mourning, and the first master of the He family's hair turned white overnight. General Fei Hong and his sister were very close, so he personally took care of his cousin's funeral. The funeral lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and the whole city knew about it. These half-truths flew into He Yan's ears like snowflakes, and she could only laugh it off. The truth had been covered up, and she had to uncover it. Before that, she had to live well. Chapter 7. At night, the wind came in through the cracks in the window and made the candlelight sway slightly. He Yen looked at the silver pieces in front of him and asked, "That's all?" "I've already asked the shopkeeper to give me more," Qing Mei said awkwardly, but the shopkeeper said that the jewelry can only be exchanged for this much. He Yen nodded, "Then you can leave first." Qing Mei left. He Yen picked up the silver pieces one by one and put them in his palm. There were only 2 pieces in total. She felt that her heart seemed to be broken along with them. When she was in the He family, she didn't lack money. Even if she was really short of money, she could casually take some jewelry or jade pendant to exchange for some money. Later, when she was on the battlefield, she didn't need money. When she returned to the capital, the emperor's rewards filled several courtyards of the He family. She thought of the gold, silver, and jewelry bestowed to General Fei Hong. She could take any one of them and solve the He family's urgent needs. But she wasn't in the He family now. He Yen sighed heavily and finally understood what it meant to be, a penny stumped a hero. Money was money. There was one more thing. She also wanted to go to the drill ground. Going up the mountain to chop firewood every day could certainly strengthen her body, but it only increased her physical strength. If she wanted to recover her strength, the fastest way was to go to the drill ground and fight with others, shooting arrows and riding horses. But she didn't know if He Sui, who loved his daughter very much, would agree. She blew out the candle and went to bed. No matter what, everything could wait until tomorrow. The next day, after chopping firewood and going down the mountain, He Yunsheng had lunch and went to sell cakes. He Yen looked at his big basket full of cakes and asked, "You made so many cakes. Can you sell them all? The weather is hot. There are a lot of people coming to buy cakes." He Yunsheng said, "After a few days, it's time to sell other cakes." He Yunsheng was really worried about this family. He was very clear about these business matters. He Yan was in awe and patted his shoulder, then let's go. He Yunqing's body stiffened. He Yan's action was really, very manly. When they arrived at the shack, there weren't many peddlers because they had arrived early. The two of them found a good spot near the street. He took out the big cake. It was the beginning of April. When the sun came out in the afternoon, it felt like summer. The large cake was sweet and sour, and also had the fragrance of plums. It was the perfect time to buy it as a snack. As He Yunqing expected, business was good. He Yunqing picked up the cakes and He Yan collected the money. While the two of them were busy, they suddenly saw a group of people aggressively rushing towards their position. The leader was Wang Jiugui from yesterday. Pa! Wang Jiugui slammed both of his hands on the table. The surrounding people hurriedly retreated, unwilling to be implicated in this disaster. He Yunqing was fearless and said angrily, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Wang Jiugui coldly snorted, "You hit me yesterday, do you think I can just let it go?" He Yunqing rolled up his sleeves and said coldly, "You want to fight? I'll accompany you." "Good boy, you have guts." Wang Jiugui took a step back, and the minions behind him surrounded He Yunqing. "Young man, I advise you not to be too arrogant." He Yunqing was unmoved. At this moment, He Yan said, "Stop." He Yunqing and Wang Jiugui looked at He Yan together. When Wang Jiugui saw He Yan, he laughed again and said, "This boy is not sensible, but he is your younger brother. I still have to give face to Lady He. If Lady He is willing to accompany me for a walk, I will let this matter go. I am a magnanimous person and won't bicker with a child. I think you can't spit out ivory from a dog's mouth." He Yunqing was furious. "Wait." He Yan grabbed He Yunqing's hand. He Yunqing wanted to break free, but no matter how hard he tried, He Yan's hand firmly clamped down on him. He Yunqing couldn't help but be stunned. When did He Yan's strength become so strong? If you have something to say, don't say it here. You will scare the people around. He Yan said indifferently, "Let's go over there and talk." She pointed to a small alley in the distance. "No." "Okay." He Yunqing and Wang Jiugui spoke together. He Yunqing said anxiously, "You are a girl, how can you and them, these people are not good people." Wang Jiugui laughed, "It seems that Lady He is sensible. Let's go. I also brought a gift for Lady He today." He Yunqing still wanted to make trouble. He Yan leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Do you think that I chopped firewood with you in the mountains for nothing? Don't worry, it will be fine. Just for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea." The girl's voice was soft and gentle, with a trace of inexplicable laughter. He Yunqing couldn't help but be stunned. When he came back to his senses, He Yan had already walked away with Wang Jiugui and the others. He Yunqing wanted to chase after them, but when he thought of what He Yan said to him, he stopped himself. He would trust her this time. The time it takes to brew a cup of tea. If she didn't come back in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, he would go and find her. On the other side, He Yan and Wang Jiugui walked into the small alley. Above the small alley was the wine shop of Zuiyu House. They could faintly hear the melodious sound of the zither inside. He Yan had been looking forward to this place for a long time, but she had never been there. Not long after she returned to the capital, He Rufei came back. She was dressed as a girl, so she couldn't enter this kind of place. Younger sister Wang Jiugui grinned and leaned forward. "What do you want to talk to me about?" "My younger brother." "You're talking about young master Wang Jiugui was slightly surprised, but he quickly smiled and waved his hand magnanimously. "I won't lower myself to his level, you know that." He took out a round powder box the color of a duck's egg from his bosom, and touched He Yan's face with his other hand. "I have you in my heart, from now on, we are a family." Before Wang Jiugui could finish his words, they were replaced by a scream. In Zuiyu House, the zither string trembled slightly because of this scream. A wrong note was plucked, like a scratch on a beautiful jade, abrupt and regretful. Someone asked in confusion, "What's that sound?" A corner of the muslin curtain was lifted by the handle of the fan. The teacup was exquisite, but it was not as slender as the fingers holding the tea. He Yen let go of his hand, and Wang Jiogui's arm hung limply, his face full of horror. He Yen smiled faintly, raised his hand, and the box of powder box smashed towards Wang Jiogui's head, smashing white foam on his face. "Thank you for your gift, but I don't like this kind of inferior powder. Remember, don't give me this kind of thing in the future." "Slut! Hit him!" Wang Jiogui wailed, but didn't forget to give the order. When the young girl heard this, it was as if she had heard a joke. Her eyes curved, and her laughter was as clear as a mountain spring. She was really happy. The spring breeze blew up the corner of her skirt, her black hair, snow-white skin, almond-shaped eyes were bright and benevolent. She was like a dainty young lady walking on the blue road. But the words she said were terrifying. She rubbed her wrist, and said with a smile, "You better not regret it." Chapter 8. Wang Jiogui felt that he must be dreaming. He pinched his thigh hard and immediately cried out in pain, "Ouch!" It didn't seem like a dream. But if it wasn't a dream, how could he explain what was happening in front of him? In just a moment, his lackeys were all lying on the ground. The culprit had one foot on the stone steps and was brushing the dust off her clothes. Feeling Wang Jiogui's gaze, she looked over. Her eyes were clear and bright, making Wang Jiogui's hair stand. He had never seen He Yen like this. He Yen wasn't like this. He Yen was beautiful, mean, greedy, vain, and liked to take advantage of others. There were countless women like this in Shua City. Most of them were arrogant, but their lives were thin. The good ones could become concubines in rich families. The bad ones would marry an ordinary person and live a sad life. He Sui raised her like a young lady. He Yen had never touched any sharp weapons in her life. Her hands were either playing the zither or painting. At least, they weren't used to hit people. But just now, Wang Jiogui saw her hands clenched into fists and punched the man beside him to the ground. He still remembered that He Yen had just grabbed his arm. Before his body could go numb, he felt pain in his arm and screamed. How were those fingers? They were sharper than an axe. This woman was too scary. What kind of medicine did she eat? She became so strong overnight. She could defeat more than 10 people by herself. Wang Jiogui wanted to cry. He hadn't thought about how to beg for mercy when he saw the girl walking towards him. "Grandaunt, please spare me." His rationality disappeared at this moment. Wang Jiogui blurted out, "I didn't recognize Mount Tai. Please be magnanimous and let me go. Don't give me this kind of gift in the future." He Yen said gently, "I don't like it." Okay. Wang Jiogui said, "Okay," several times. Afraid that He Yen didn't believe him, he added, "Tell me what you like. I'll buy it for you. Is that okay?" "That won't be necessary, I won't accept a reward if it's not deserved." He Yen laughed, "We're all neighbors, don't make such jokes in the future." Yes. Wang Jiogui was moved to tears. "But I have something to ask you," she said. A moment later, He Yen left a mess on the ground and left in a relaxed manner, leaving behind groans and groans. She walked briskly and did not know that after she left, on a certain floor of the drunken Jade Tower, someone released the hand holding the fan, and the gauze curtain covered the mess downstairs. When did the women in the capital become so fierce and fierce? This was a brisk voice that was filled with laughter and ridicule. Could this be the reason why uncle is still unwilling to get married? His words were not answered. The man continued, "Uncle, why don't we ask around and find out which family that young lady was from? If she's not bad, why don't you take her in as one of your female guards? At night, you can." Bang! Someone's fingertips lightly tapped the table, and the tea lid on the half-cup accurately flew into his mouth with a whoosh, leaving him speechless. Woo woo, woo woo, the man was unwilling to give up and made threatening gestures. If you say one more word of nonsense, I'll throw you down from here. A lazy and indifferent voice interrupted the other's complaints. The room quieted down. The plucked strings of flowing light slowly flowed through the elegant room, covering the spring scenery outside the window. The tea continued to be drunk. Someone muttered, "Stingy," but it was quickly drowned out by the sound of the zither. He Yunxing saw that He Yen came back safe and sound and was relieved. "Are you okay? Where are Wang Jiugui and the others?" He Yunxing didn't see Wang Jiugui's figure and asked. "I tried to reason with them and move them emotionally, and they left. They also said that they will come another day to apologize and won't do such a thing in the future." He Yen said, "Don't worry about them, just continue to sell cakes." He Yunxing looked at her suspiciously. If Wang Jiugui was really so reasonable, he wouldn't be called Wang Jiugui. But He Yen didn't look like she wanted to say more, and she didn't look like she was hurt. He Yunxing was a young man, so he quickly put this matter to the back of his mind. At night, after dinner, He Yunxing wanted to go to bed, but He Yen stopped him. "What's the matter? Do you have clean clothes?" He Yen asked. He Yunxing didn't understand. "I want to see if there's anything on your clothes that needs to be mended." He Yen said, "I can help to mend it at night." He Yunxing's expression was about to crack. Ever since he was born, this was the first time He Yen had asked to mend his clothes. For a moment, the young man's heart was filled with a strange feeling, but, he asked hesitantly, "Have you done needlework before?" He seemed to remember that He Yen didn't know how to sew, and Qing Mei did all the needlework. "You're underestimating me." Of course not." He Yen gave him a push. "Hurry up and get it. Bring whatever you can get." He Yunxing obediently found a pile of clothes. He Yen picked up the clothes and walked into the house. He Yunxing was still a little hesitant. "Why don't I ask Qing Mei to do it? Qing Mei's work is not as good as mine. Go to sleep. You have to wake up early tomorrow," He Yen said. After sending the young man away, He Yen returned to the house and looked around. Finally, she found a maroon round-necked, narrow-sleeved long robe. He Sui probably gave all his money to his daughter. He Yunxing didn't even have a decent piece of clothing. He only had some cotton clothes, and this long robe was probably the leftovers of other people. The color of the washed clothes was old. Fortunately, she was about the same height as He Yunxing, so the long robe barely fit her. Then, she tied her hair into a man's bun and stuck a tree branch outside the door. She made her skin darker and her eyebrows thicker. He Yen looked at the mirror. She looked like a young man. In her previous life, she was very good at dressing up as a man. At least during those years, no one noticed anything wrong. In this life, she didn't feel awkward dressing up as a man. Unfortunately, she wanted to be an elegant young master, but when she wore this robe, she looked like a young master from a declining family. It was barely pleasing to the eye. She paced back and forth in the house. When she was sure that nothing would go wrong, she secretly opened the door and walked to the courtyard. She nimbly jumped over the wall and came to the street. At this time of the year, there was no curfew in the capital. It was a lively and bustling time. He Yen walked along the brightly lit street. The boats along the shore sang and danced pleasantly. The hawkers on both sides of the street shouted loudly. Spring was full of life. It was a prosperous night. She hadn't been able to go out like this for many years. He Rufei had returned to the He family. He Yen had married into the Su family. He Yen had lost her sight. These lively, bustling, and beautiful things seemed to be very far away from her. But tonight, with the night breeze blowing from the lake, she regained what she had lost. She was free. She was free from the He family and had to start all over again. She was grateful to the heavens. The capital was not far from the drunken Jade house. Outside the Ming house, beautiful girls were welcoming guests with smiles on their faces. This was not a brothel, but the capital's largest and most famous gambling house, Lutong House. He Yen stopped in front of Lutong House. Chapter 9. At the entrance of Lutong Zhuang, a woman wearing a flower hairpin stopped He Yen and said, "Gongzi, this is a gambling house." "I know." He Yen nodded and took out a piece of silver from his sleeve. He waved it in front of her and said, "I'm here to gamble." The woman was stunned. Before she could say anything, He Yen had already walked in. The woman standing outside the gambling house was a gambling prostitute. The people who came to Lutong Zhuang were all from wealthy families. Silver was worthless, so they learned to treat people differently. Those who didn't look very rich would persuade people to leave. First of all, it wasn't very nice for poor people to walk inside. They would dirty the embroidered carpet. Second of all, the poor people cared about money and couldn't afford to lose. Once they lost, they would cry to the heavens and earth and refuse to pay. They would disturb the noble's mood and lose more than they gain. He Yan's clothes were old and washed. He definitely didn't look like a young master from a wealthy family. Unfortunately, the gambling prostitute didn't have time to stop her. She had already entered uninvited. The gambling house was full of people. Everyone's face was red. Those who won were naturally complacent. Those who lost were unreconciled. They took out a stack of banknotes and shouted, "Again." He Yen walked and looked around. It turned out that the rumors about gambling houses and brothels were true. Today, after she taught Wang Jiugue a lesson, she asked Wang Jiugue a question. She asked him which was the biggest gambling house in the capital. Wang Jiugue, a street punk, must know. Sure enough, Wang Jiugue told her about Lutong Zhuang. He Yen had never been to a gambling house. Before she joined the Fuyue army, because of her special identity, she couldn't go to places with more people, let alone a gambling house. When she joined the Fuyue army and returned to the capital after winning the war, He Yunqing came back. She became the demissy of the second branch of the He family. She couldn't go to this kind of place. Therefore, this was the first time she didn't even know where the gambling house was. Lutong Zhuang, on the other hand, had everything. Pai Gao, danqi, Chinese chess, grass fighting, cockfighting. She was dazzled by the sight. While she was amazed, she also felt that it was a pity that she did not know how to do any of these. Some people were guessing the dice. They put the dice in a bowl and guessed the number. This was the simplest game, and it also attracted the most people. He Yan's eyes were dazzled by the flowing silver. The corners of He Yan's mouth finally broke into a smile. The He family was really too poor, but He Yunqing still had to attend a school or martial arts school. Pawn jewelry couldn't be exchanged for much money, and it was still far from being enough to buy a bundle. Even if he wanted to make a big cake and sell it, it would take a long time to save up. After thinking about it, He Yen could only think of going to the gambling house. Although it was opportunistic, he could not care so much at the moment. "Hey, brother, why are you standing here? Don't stand here if you don't want to gamble." The people around He Yen shoved him with disdain in their eyes. "If you don't have money, why did you come to a casino? Can't you just buy some nice clothes?" It was really unappetizing. He Yen said, "Let's gamble." The people around were all wearing gold and silver. They were either rich or noble. When they suddenly saw a young man in poor clothes, they couldn't help but look over. He Yen took out the only 2 pieces of silver from his sleeve and put them on the table. Someone mocked, "Boy, you should think clearly. This is not a joke. I see that you don't have any other silver on you. Why don't you stop gambling? If you really lose and cry, others won't return the silver to you." It wasn't that such a thing didn't happen. Gambling was addictive. The more one lost, the more one gambled. Some people lost all their land deeds, wives and children. In the end, they regretted it and were kicked out by the people of Lutong village. This happened from time to time. They looked at He Yen with pity. The poor people in Lutong village had no way out. He Yen smiled, "It's okay, I'm just gambling for fun." Everyone burst into laughter, but no one knew whether they were laughing out of goodwill or just for fun. The dice were put into the bowl and turned upside down. The dealer shook the dice left and right. The dice made a crisp sound. It was accompanied by the lively voices of the people. It was like music. He could vaguely hear the rough men talking and laughing loudly. He Yen remembered those years in the barracks. When she entered the barracks, from a soldier to a deputy general, from a deputy general to a general. She didn't have any relationship with the He family. She relied on her own flesh and blood to earn her position. There was no other entertainment in the cold and bitter border. Those men in the barracks couldn't hold it in and secretly gambled. He Yen would punish them every time he saw them. He couldn't stop them from gambling in private. He Yen was also helpless. In the end, he could only rule that they couldn't gamble with silver. They could gamble with other things like a drumstick, a piece of dry food, or a piece of fur. They didn't really want to gamble, but they were really bored. He Yen couldn't bear to deprive them of their only pleasure other than training and fighting. They let He Yen play with them. Sometimes, He Yen would join them for 1 or 2 rounds when he was in the mood. Every time, he lost badly. She lost almost all of her trinkets, but she wasn't angry. She just felt that there were specializations in this field. Not everyone knew how to gamble. The crisp sound of the dice stopped abruptly. The dealer put down the bowl and looked at her. "Big," He Yen said. "Open." The bowl was opened. 2 dice lay quietly on the table. Everyone held their breath and looked over. The 2 dice, 1 5 and 1 6, were indeed big. Everyone was a little surprised. After a moment, the man who laughed at He Yen laughed, "You're lucky. Take this money and get some good clothes." Some scattered silver and banknotes were piled up in front of He Yen. He Yen pushed the silver out again. Everyone looked at her. "Again," she said with a smile. Someone couldn't help but say, "Hey, this kid is a little arrogant. Brother, you'd better quit while you're ahead. It's good enough that you won." This was a kind advice. "Do you really think you'll always be so lucky?" Ha ha ha, children are so naive. Sounds of mockery, persuasion, and chatter filled his ears. He Yen only had eyes for the 2 dice among the multitudes of people. He Yunxing needed to attend school and become a military officer. Qing Mei couldn't finish all the chores, so the He family should hire more servants. It would be summer in a few months, and the rainy season would come. Some of the tiles on the He family's door were missing, so it would definitely leak. Both inside and outside, they needed silver. She wanted to find out about Su Zhiheng and He Rufei, so she couldn't do without silver. She didn't need a lot of silver, but she definitely couldn't do without it. Otherwise, when she couldn't move an inch, she would know that life was difficult. "Have you thought it through?" The middle-aged man who shook the dice stroked his beard and smiled kindly. He Yen returned a polite smile. Again. Chapter 10. Money was piled up on the table, and some people stacked their jade pendants on top of them. A young and inexperienced boy who had good luck after good fortune naturally attracted the attention of others. Not long after, the place was filled with people who wanted to watch the fun. Big. Open, Gongzi, please choose. Small. Again. Open, again. Open, again. Open. In front of He Yen, there was a pile of banknotes. The people who laughed at her just now had already quieted down. Even a fool could see that she was not a newbie who came to play for the first time. If it wasn't for the reputation of Lutong Zhuang, others would have suspected that she was working together with the banker to deceive outsiders. The faint sound of the night watch came from outside. He Yen said, "It's getting late, I should go back." Gongzi, the bearded old man smiled, "Let's play one last round. How about we change the bet?" He Yen looked up at him, "How do we play? Let's not play big or small. I think Gongzi is an expert. How about we guess the number of the dice?" He pushed all the jewelry and banknotes on the table to the middle of the table. "If Gongzi wins, these will all be Gongzi's." He Yen looked at the banknotes on the table. She had already won a lot, and she knew that this would attract other people's attention. In the past, when she was in the army, she had heard the young generals talk about the dark side of casinos, so she knew a thing or two about it. She should have stopped when she was ahead, but for some reason, He Yunqing's yearning gaze when he talked about going to school appeared in her mind, as well as the one and only clothes she was wearing, which had been washed out. "Okay," she said. The crowd was in an uproar, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Guessing big or small and guessing numbers were two completely different things. Guessing big or small depended on luck. There were only two outcomes, big or small. But the number had to be accurate to every single one. If it was wrong, it was wrong. The chance of winning was too small. Unless it was someone who really knew how to throw dice, they probably wouldn't do it like this. Moreover, the banker's method was different. He Yen also pushed all the banknotes in front of him forward. If she lost this round, everything she had done tonight would have been for naught. If he won, He Yunqing's tuition would be enough for the He family's food and drink for the next 3 to 5 years. When the crowd saw this, they all raised their stakes. "Me too. This is my silver, I bet on this brother to win." "How is that possible?" "I'll bet on my opponent, ha ha ha." The higher the stakes, the more people would watch. Getting rich overnight was even more irresistible than the best opera troupe in the capital. The long-bearded old man slowly lifted the bowl, and the casino quieted down. It seemed that only the sound of the dice colliding in the copper bowl could be heard. In the end, the person involved couldn't see clearly. The sound of shaking the dice came to an abrupt end. With a bang, the bowl was upside down on the table. 1 dice, 2 dice, both of them landed. Everyone looked at He Yen. He Yen closed her eyes. It was as if she had returned to the days when she was in the Su family. She sat in front of the table, shaking the dice alone. She opened the lid alone. She touched each side of the dice alone. She tried to grasp the light in the darkness. 2, 5. She opened her eyes and said. The upside-down bowl and chopsticks were opened, and the 2 dice fell naked in front of everyone's eyes. At first, it was quiet. After a while, someone softly cried out in surprise. Then, one after another, cries of surprise rose and fell. He Yen was closest to a pampered young master. He grabbed He Yan's arm and shouted, "Master, from today onwards, you are my master. Please accept a bow from your disciple." He Yen helplessly pulled away the young master's hand that was grabbing her arm. The long-bearded old man's smile stiffened. However, after a moment, he stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Young master, you have good skills. These silvers are all yours." After a pause, he said, "May I ask young master's esteemed name? Would you do me the honor of drinking a cup of tea with this old man before you leave?" He Yen put all the silver notes and jewelry into her bosom and politely declined, "Nameless brat, there's no need to mention it. It's really late today. As for the tea, I'll drink it another day." After she finished speaking, she walked past everyone and quickly left Lutong Manor. The people in the gambling house continued to marvel at the gambling house. The long-bearded old man's smile didn't change. He turned around and walked upstairs. Someone bowed their head in front of him. He said, "Follow him." On the other side, the big man with a gloomy face pressed his fingers together and waved to Ding Yi behind him. He then followed him out of Lutong Manor. "You want to run away after winning my money? There's no such thing in this world, idiot." He Yan's stalker seemed to have understood what was going on. Someone grabbed He Yan's clothes and pulled her down. Rip, the hem of his long gown was torn open by someone. Aya. She sighed. It's broken. You're still in the mood to worry about your clothes? The burly man was so angry that his nose was crooked. He was even more furious. I'll beat you to death today. He rushed toward He Yan. This man was as big as a small mountain. When he moved, he seemed to feel the ground shaking. In addition, he had many servants. If he wanted to teach this young man a lesson, it would be easy. But today, he kicked an iron plate for the first time. This young man looked young, but for some reason, he was like a loach. He was slippery and no one could catch him. He shuttled back and forth in this group of people. He didn't attack much, but every time he hit a vital point. Not long after, the servants and guards were beaten to the ground. He Yan dodged the burly man's punch. She turned around and kicked the man's abdomen. Unfortunately, her movement was a little crooked. The burly man screamed in a moment. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. She was a little guilty. After all, this body and her skills were not well coordinated. She couldn't hit the target with her punches. The burly man covered his lower body and fell to the ground moaning. That sound in the night made people's hair stand on end, but also sad. He Yan bent down to pick up the silver on the ground. She worked hard for the whole night and even fought a fight. It wasn't easy to earn the silver, so she couldn't let others take advantage of it. The moonlight fell on the ground. The ground was full of silver and jewelry. The young man bent down to pick them up. It was like a scene in a fairy tale where a scholar accidentally stumbled into a fairyland and accidentally saw treasures everywhere. He couldn't help but take them for himself. He Yan thought of this and found it funny. She laughed. She picked up the silver and looked at the people who were groaning on the ground. She was about to run away when she suddenly heard a gentle voice. Little brother, you dropped your silver. He Yan looked back. She saw a young man standing at the door of the pub with the lights out. He was wearing an indigo wide-sleeved robe. The robe swayed in the wind, making his figure look even thinner. His fine black hair was tied up with a blue jade crown. He had long eyebrows and thin eyes. He looked extremely gentle and refined, like a fairy. He had a smile on his face as he took a step forward. There was a piece of silver in his palm. He Yan must have dropped it during the battle just now. She had already sensed that there was someone else in the pub. However, the other person was here from the beginning. He didn't come out and didn't want to participate in the fight. He was probably just a passerby, so she didn't care. She didn't expect to see this person at this moment. He Yan had seen many men. In her previous life, she had interacted with men as a man. Most of the men she met were brave men like the burly man tonight. They couldn't be considered handsome, let alone beautiful. Su Zhiheng was handsome and elegant. He was one of the good-looking men she had met. However, compared to the man in front of her, he seemed to be inferior. She was just thinking that when she went to pick up the silver, it was like a story in a fairy tale. Now it seemed even more like it. A poor young man met a real immortal and was shocked by the immortal's appearance. Was the immortal going to give the young man pointers? The closer she got, the more she felt that the man was like the immortal in the murals. The immortal saw that she didn't speak, so he reminded her, little brother. He Yan came back to her senses. She took the piece of silver that she almost threw away from the man's hand and said with a smile, thank you. The man smiled again. You're welcome. He Yan turned and left without looking back. She walked very fast, like a wild cat skimming over the wall. In a few moments, she disappeared. No one could catch up with her. In the night, another person came out and walked to the side of the man in blue. He whispered, fourth young master, that young man, he should be passing by. Don't worry about him. The immortal smiled. He seemed to think of something funny and his smile widened. He's quite clever. Chapter 12. He Yan took the money and returned home. Qing Mei didn't notice that He Yan was fumbling for the small box of rouge and face powder on the table. He poured everything inside and threw the silver and jewelry he won tonight into the box. Then, he groped around in the dark and went to bed. She was probably in a good mood after winning the money. She also solved her worries. That night, she slept very soundly. In her dream, she was gambling with her brothers in the tent. The men in the army shouted at the top of their lungs, "Open! Open!" He Yan looked embarrassed. Someone laughed, "General, why did you lose again? Did the general win once tonight?" The deputy general pretended to shake his head. "Aya, the general is not good in this aspect." "Get lost, what do you mean by not good or not good? Haven't you heard of the saying that if you are frustrated in love, you will be successful in gambling? The general is frustrated in gambling, but he is invincible in love. What does an old bachelor like you know?" He Yan heard this and laughed. She laughed and laughed. Then, she felt someone pushing her. She opened her eyes and saw Qing Mei's face. "Miss, what good dream did you have? Why are you laughing so happily?" The sunlight had already reached the window sill, and the room was bright. She stretched out the back of her hand to block the dazzling light. She was a little surprised that she woke up late. Sure enough, it was a good night's sleep in spring. She thought of the dream last night and couldn't help but sigh. The men in the past said that her gambling skills were bad, so she was successful in love. They were completely wrong. However, in a way, they were right. Now that she was able to kill everyone in Lutong Manor, she was successful in gambling, but she was naturally unsuccessful in love. That was why she was defeated so badly. He Yunqing's unhappy voice came from outside the door. "He Yan, it's already late in the morning. Are you still going today?" From the beginning, she strongly opposed to He Yan's request. Now, she was used to chopping firewood with him. He Yunqing didn't understand how he and He Yan ended up in this situation. "Wait for me." He Yan quickly changed into a clean set of clothes. Qing Mei went out with the basin. He Yunqing walked in and said, "Why are you so slow today?" "He Yan. What's the matter?" He Yan was tying a sandbag. When he looked up, he saw He Yunqing's angry expression. Puzzled, she asked, "What's wrong?" He Yunqing pointed at the chair. "What's wrong? Why don't you take a look?" The young man's tone was filled with anger. If there was a fire on his head, it would have ignited the entire house. He Yan looked in the direction of his finger. On the chair was the maroon gown that He Yan had borrowed from He Yunqing last night. After she returned to her room, she casually took off her clothes and threw them on the chair. She hadn't remembered this since she woke up in the morning. Before He Yan could react, He Yunqing stepped forward and shook off the gown. The long robe had been crumpled into a ball by He Yan and was stained with dirt. Now that it was shaken like this, it revealed a tear in the middle of the robe. It was as if someone had cut it in the middle of the robe. It was very miserable. "This is the gown that you mended for me?" He Yunqing was burning with anger. Last night, he was touched and thought that this sister really cared for her younger brother. Now, she was really sent by the heavens to punish him. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain. He Yan tried to calm the child down. Explain? How can you explain? Do you know? He Yunqing was originally very angry and reproachful, but when he reached this point, his voice suddenly choked up and his eyes turned red. He said, "This is my only robe. If you cut it to pieces, what will I do?" He Yan had a big headache. She was really afraid of seeing people cry. Especially this aggressive young man who was like a little calf. Suddenly, he felt wronged and shed tears. He Yunqing also felt wronged. Young people all cared about their reputation. As long as he was filial and indomitable, he was a good man. Although that was the case, everyone had vanity. This maroon gown had been given to him by one of his older brothers, and he had been wearing it for many years, simply because his own clothes were all short shirts and trousers, which were convenient for working, so this gown, no matter what, always looked like a young master. Yan's clothes couldn't be compared to the clothes of the young ladies of big families, but every year, she would buy 1 or 2 pieces of fashionable clothes. Sui spoiled her, so Yunxing couldn't say anything. Girls love to be beautiful. How could a man care about these worldly things? But at this moment, Yunxing suddenly felt wronged. Yan stammered, this gown is ruined. We'll buy another one. We'll find the most famous tailor in the capital to make a brand new one for you. The kind with embroidered patterns. The material must also be good. Don't cry. I didn't do it on purpose, okay? Yunxing. Yan had never coaxed him with such kind words. He didn't know why, but Yunxing's anger suddenly dissipated. But he still had some resentment. We don't have money. Who said so? Yan opened the makeup box and showed it to him. We have money. Yunxing originally just took a casual glance, but when he looked closely, he was stunned and said, where did you get the money? Huh? The next moment, Yunxing suddenly rushed forward and said in surprise, your face. Yan was shocked. He thought to himself, could it be that the face could change? It can't be. Before she went home last night, she washed her face in the water tank at the door. She should have washed off all the makeup. Just as she rushed in front of the mirror, she heard Yunxing's angry voice ring out beside her. Who hit you? In the mirror, the girl's features were elegant and pretty, her pair of watery eyes were full of autumn waves, there was no change, but Yan's gaze moved downwards, the girl's lips had an additional shallow bruise, it was especially conspicuous on her white and tender skin. Just now, when Qing Mei woke her up, she used her hand to block the sun. Qing Mei didn't see it. But now, Yunxing saw it. Lady He's delicate skin couldn't withstand any damage. She seemed to have been punched by someone last night, but it didn't hurt or itch. So, she didn't take it to heart. She didn't expect that her face would be marked today. Yunxing was still asking, what happened to you? These silvers, these clothes. He was suddenly frightened and his eyes were sad. You. Seeing that the boy was getting more and more unreasonable, Yan gently knocked his head. What are you thinking? Last night, I wore your clothes and went to the casino. I gambled for 2 rounds and won some silvers. Some people came looking for trouble, so I taught them a lesson. I was careless and got hurt. It's okay, it will disappear tomorrow. She said it casually, but she didn't know how much her words shocked the boy in front of her. Yan went to the casino. Yan went to the casino and won money. After Yan won the money, someone came looking for trouble and even taught the other party a lesson. No matter which one it was, Yunxing couldn't accept it. He even suspected that his sister had been switched. How could these things be so unimaginable? Yes, Yan calmly explained, because we were too poor, I wanted to go to the casino to try my luck. Who knew that my luck was so good? It was probably God's blessing. I was very afraid of those people who came looking for trouble, but recently, I went to the mountains to chop firewood with you. My strength increased a lot, so I was lucky to beat them. Seeing that Yunxing was still stunned, Yan continued, if you don't believe me, you can go to Lutong village and ask around. Last night, a boy wearing a maroon robe won a lot of money. I'm not lying to you. Yunxing's mind was a mess. Seeing that Yan was full of confidence, it seemed that what she said was true. But, oh, that's right, Yan smiled, since we have money now, from today onwards, we won't sell denai cakes anymore. Then what will we do? Yunxing murmured. Naturally, we'll go to the school. Do you want to go to school, Yunsheng? She asked. Chapter 13. He Yunsheng's mind was still thinking about what He Yan had said just now when he stepped out of the door. Do you want to go to school, Yunsheng? Of course, he wanted to. There were teachers in school and teachers in martial arts. He could study with other youths of the same age. When the time came, whether it was the imperial examination or the military examination, he would be able to rely on himself to find a future. It was not like what he was doing now, where he was just randomly cultivating his qi. It was really terrible. In the past, his family did not have money. But now, they had money. He Yunsheng's suppressed desire was gradually born again. He sneaked a glance at the young girl walking beside him. He Yan. Ever since He Yan recovered from her illness, it seemed that everything in the family had improved. It was no longer like a pool of stagnant water. He did not know when, but this pool of water was swept by the wind and rippled, so the old air was swept away, and the flowers were red and the willows were green. It was spring. He Yan noticed his gaze and suddenly touched the veil on her face. She warned him again, you said that when you see father later, you are not allowed to reveal anything. Do you understand? Okay. He Yunsheng replied with difficulty. The drill ground was in a large empty space on the east side of the city gate. He Yan had never been there before. After she returned to the capital with the army, He Rufei replaced her. After that, she was not able to participate in any of the general Feihong activities. It was just that when she went on an outing as young Mistress Su, she happened to pass by it once. At that time, she looked forward to it very much. The drill ground in the capital was still very big. The flag on the flagpole was flying. Sometimes, the generals would review the troops here. That was very spacious. However, in the recent years of peace and prosperity, the drill ground had almost become a place where the children of the rich played riding and shooting. There were archery targets and running tracks everywhere. The weapons on the weapons rack were dazzling. When He Yan walked to this place, she could not take her eyes off it. She once had a sword called Qing Lang. It was indestructible and could cut through iron like mud. It accompanied her on the battlefield for many years. When she married into the Su family, she did not bring it along, even if she wanted to. He Yuanqing said to her, the Su family is a scholarly family. If you bring a sword with you, I'm afraid your husband and mother-in-law won't like it. He Yuanliang, her biological father, also advised her with concern, it's inauspicious. Therefore, she left Qing Lang at home and instructed her family to take good care of it. However, when he returned home after the wedding, Qing Lang was hung on He Rufei's waist. She questioned He Rufei, but before He Rufei could say anything, He Yuanqing said, if it weren't for the fact that it's General Feihong now and the sword isn't here, people would be suspicious. That's right, that's right. In any case, you won't be able to use it in the future. He Yuanliang supported. Her joy of returning home was like being doused with cold water, chilling her from head to toe. It was also at that time that she suddenly realized what marriage meant. What it meant to hand over the title of General Feihong. It meant that from now on, she was the Su family's eldest young mistress, the He family's second daughter. She would be at home assisting her husband and teaching her children. She would be at the same level as her husband. Her sword, her horse, her comrades, her freedom, her achievements and achievements that she had fought for, would all be given to someone else. And no one would know. First, it was her Qing Lang. Then, it was her horse. Then, it was her subordinates. Her everything. All her hard work over the past few decades had become someone else's wedding dress. She had nothing. He Yuanqing asked, hey, what's wrong? You don't look well. He Yan was startled. When she came back to her senses, she smiled and said, it's nothing. She looked left and right. Why don't I see father? They seem to be over there. He Yuanqing pointed to the track on the other side. They're probably training the horses. The school often bought new horses. Some of them were wild and unruly, so they needed to be trained for a period of time. Nowadays, the rank of the gate commandant was extremely low. When they weren't patrolling the city, in a way, they were almost like training partners for the nobles who came to the school. Let's go. He Yuanqing said. He Yan nodded and suddenly stopped. She picked up an iron-head stick from the top of the weapon rack and held it in her hand. He Yuanqing asked, "What are you going to do with this?" "Feel it." He Yan said, "Let's go." He Yuanqing was speechless. The two of them walked towards the track next to the stable. Before they got close, they heard a clamor. The two of them looked up. Two horses galloped past in front of them. On one of the horses sat a young master in brocade clothes. On the other horse sat a person who was as sturdy and dark as a black bear. Who else could it be but He Sui? Who was He Sui racing with? The young master is so awesome. The manservant who was watching next to him looked excited. 3 races, and he won every time. Oh, it's already been 3 races. He Yan raised his head and looked over. It didn't matter at first glance, but at first glance, he frowned. The horse that He Sui was riding probably hadn't been tamed in time. With one look, one could tell that it was wild and hard to tame. Its footsteps were very hurried. He Sui was already struggling to ride this horse. That young master in embroidered clothes even deliberately used his own horse to knock He Sui's horse. He Yan even saw that his horse whip hit He Sui's horse's butt. The wild horse was alive and kicking and almost threw He Sui off. He Yuanqing called out, "Father!" His heart was in pain. The young master in brocade clothes laughed. This battle was finally over. He Sui's horse came to a stop. When it came to a stop, it was with great difficulty. It struggled on the spot for quite a while before it finally calmed down. The young master in brocade clothes had already been helped off the horse. He said proudly, "Commandant, he is still not good enough. He can't even tame a horse. But this race is better than the previous one. At least he didn't fall down and get kicked by the horse." Fall down? Get kicked? He Yan looked up at He Sui. The big man's face was bruised and swollen. There was a hoof print on his clothes. Obviously, he fell down hard. This guy. She couldn't help but feel a little angry. The young master in brocade clothes smiled and threw out a silver ingot. "Good, good. I'm very happy. This is for you." The silver ingot fell to the ground. He Sui bent down to pick it up regardless of the other's eyes. Then he smiled and thanked, "Thank you, young Master Zhao." He Yuanqing had never seen his father's humble side. He was furious and shouted, "What are you thanking me for? Can't you see he is playing with you?" "Yuanqing." He Sui saw He Yan and his son. He asked, "Yan Yan, why are you here? Who is this guy?" Young Master Zhao asked. "This is my son, Yuanqing." He Sui smiled apologetically. "Oh." Young Master Zhao said, "Your son seems to be very unhappy with me. What's wrong? Children are not sensible." He Sui pressed He Yuanqing's head. "Quickly say sorry to young Master Zhao." "I don't." He Yuanqing struggled. This young Master Zhao was clearly humiliating He Sui, toying with He Sui like a servant. But why? No matter how low He Sui's rank was, he was still an official and not a servant of the Zhao family. Why should he be humiliated like this? He Yuanqing held his head high and refused to admit it. Young Master Zhao glanced at him, as if his interest was piqued. "How about this? I originally planned to let your father have another round with me, but I've changed my mind. If you have another round with me, this young master will reward you with an ingot of silver." He stretched out his hand, and the servant handed over an ingot of silver. "No." He Sui was shocked at first. Then he bent down and smiled. Yunsheng has never touched a horse before. Let me accompany you. He Sui usually favored He Yan, but it did not mean that he did not love his son. This young Master Zhao was not a good person. But he was used to being humiliated by rich people. He did not care about this little bit of humiliation. He Yunsheng should go to school at his age. And He Yan, he should prepare some dowry for her. She could not go to her husband's house and be looked down upon when she got married. But he did not have any other skills. Other than selling his strength, he could only please these rich people and make money. He Sui didn't expect that his son and daughter would see his pathetic state today. He Sui felt ashamed and sad. Yunsheng was a young man. He could not stand these insults. But he did not know that people were evil. With his body, if he really had a horse race with young Master Zhao today, he would lose half of his life. One had to know that this horse was a new ownerless wild horse that had not been trained even once. Not to mention racing, it was not easy to even ride this horse. He could not let anything happen to his son. I will do it. He Sui smiled. No. Young Master Zhao shook his head. I want him. He Sui's smile froze. In the stalemate, someone suddenly spoke. The clear voice broke the silence. Or, I will have a race with you. Everyone looked to the side. The person who had been silent suddenly spoke. Then they realized that there was a girl standing there. She was wearing a light red and white short-sleeved coat with a long robe and a scarlet skirt. Niao niao, her face was covered with a white veil. Only a pair of beautiful eyes could be seen. She was smiling. Who are you? Young Master Zhao asked. Me. The girl nodded slightly. I am just a horse trainer. Chapter 14. Me? I'm just a horse trainer. The girl put her hands behind her back and held an iron rod. She shook it playfully and said in a relaxed tone. Yen yen. He Sui was startled and scolded her in a low voice. What nonsense are you talking about? He Yan didn't look at He Sui. She just stared at Master Zhao and said, Master, are you willing to do it? Young Master Zhao was a man who had tender feelings for the fairer sex. Although this young girl had a veil covering her face, he could tell that her appearance was not bad. Moreover, one would not slap a smiling face. Her voice was clear and melodious. Presumably, she was also a beauty. When a delicate beauty made a request, he would comply. Miss, you don't know. This horse has a strong temperament. If it gets hurt because of this, I'll be very upset. He reminded her with good intentions. He felt that he was a gentleman. But just as he finished speaking, he heard the girl laugh. The next moment, he felt a blur in front of him. The red dress was like a lotus flower, bringing a fragrant wind. When he looked up again, He Yan was sitting upright on the horse's back, holding the reins. The horse was originally pulled by He Sui. He Sui didn't expect that He Yan would suddenly get on the horse. He let go of the reins and the horse was startled. It suddenly neighed and jumped up. Yen yen, He Sui screamed. He Yunsheng was also startled. He Yan didn't panic. She simply threw away the reins and grabbed the mane on the horse's neck. She held it tightly and didn't let the horse fall no matter how hard it struggled. She lowered her body and put her ear next to the horse's ear. She made a series of strange sounds. Strangely, gradually, the horse stopped struggling. It retracted its front hooves and calmed down. Everyone was surprised. Yen yen, come down, He Sui's heart was finally at ease. He hurriedly reached out to He Yan, don't fall. He Yunsheng finally came to his senses. The boy bit his lips. His face was pale and his voice was trembling, you, come down. Do you want to die? Ha 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 ha, young Master Zhao, who had been in a daze, suddenly laughed out loud. I didn't expect this lady to be such an expert. Since that's the case, he also mounted his horse. What's wrong with accompanying Miss? She was indeed very charming. He Yen smiled faintly, then be careful, young master. I've said before that I'm a horse trainer. After saying this, she stretched out her hand and slapped the horse's butt, causing it to gallop away in a cloud of dust. He's not using a horsewhip. Young Master Zhao mumbled. He then whipped his horse. Let's go. The two horses kicked up a cloud of dust on the track, leaving behind a crowd of dumbfounded people. He Sui slowly turned to look at He Yunsheng. He Yunsheng quickly explained, don't ask me. I don't know when she learned how to ride a horse. He Sui seemed to be in a dream. He knew his own daughter best. She barely knew how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was outstanding in dressing. But when it came to riding a horse or swordsmanship, not to mention proficiency, it was already good enough that she didn't roll her eyes when she heard the name. He Yen liked those romantic and elegant young masters. She liked to drink tea, discuss poetry, and admire flowers under the moon. She stayed away from these uncouth things, afraid that they would hurt her delicate skin. But her posture of mounting the horse was so practiced, as if she had done it thousands of times and was used to it. She was even better than him, her father. That wild horse was as obedient as a kitten under her hands. She didn't even use a whip. How did she do it? He Sui looked at the figure on the track. He Sui couldn't tame the wild horse, but He Yen was as agile as the wind. Her posture was graceful. Because it was not convenient to wear a long dress, she pulled the dress aside to reveal the trousers inside. But not only was it not rough, there was an indescribable sense of elegance. Young Master Zhao couldn't catch up with her. Young Master Zhao was a little annoyed. He came to the school field to be in the limelight, not to lose face. He Sui made him very happy just now, but what was wrong with this girl? He couldn't lose to a woman, and this woman was riding a wild horse that hadn't been tamed. Did he want to be laughed at? Absolutely impossible. Suddenly, a competitive spirit grew in young Master Zhao's heart. He whipped the horse harder. The horse felt the pain and rushed forward. It was about to overtake He Yen. Yes, that's it. Looking at He Yen's figure getting closer and closer, young Master Zhao couldn't help but feel proud. He learned to ride when he was 7 years old. After so many years, how could he lose to a woman? His horse finally overtook He Yen. Young Master Zhao laughed out loud. Miss, you have to work harder. Young Master is so brave. He Yan's voice was a little surprised. It's also the first time someone has caught up with me. As she spoke, her fingers touched the swinging iron head stick at her waist. Young Master Zhao's horse was in front, her horse was behind. Just like that, the iron head stick stabbed the horse's butt. No one noticed this slight difference, except for the horse under young Master Zhao. The horse was startled and suddenly staggered. Young Master Zhao was caught off guard. His hand loosened, and the horse whip fell down. The next moment, the horse under him didn't listen to his command and rushed forward. Young Master Zhao didn't know what to do. He tightened the reins, but it was useless. Stop, stop! He screamed. He was dizzy on the horse's back. A woman's anxious voice came from behind. Young Master Zhao. Young Master Zhao, are you okay? Save me. Young Master Zhao was so scared that his voice became sobbing. Tell it to stop. He Yen frowned in the distance. What happened? Why did I hear that young Master Zhao shouting for help? He Yen was shocked. At the end of the track, there were 2 horses running towards them. Young Master Zhao's horse was in front, but he didn't have a whip in his hand. Instead, he was holding the reins tightly and crying. He Yen was anxiously calling from behind, but she was as steady as Mount Tai. Young Master Zhao's horse seems to be startled. He Yen quickly went to the stable to get the horse. I'll go help. Young master, the servant's face turned green. Nothing must happen to you. Young Master Zhao was wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf on the horse. He Yan used one hand to pick her ear. So noisy. Such an arrogant boy. If she didn't scare him to death, she wouldn't be called He Yan. In the past, there were many new recruits who thought they were better than others. In the end, they obediently accepted the reality. In this world, there was always someone better than you. As a person, it was better to keep a low profile. When she was done admiring the scenery, she saw He Sui starting to lead his horse over from afar. Only then did He Yan slap the horse's butt again, causing it to stop. She flew off the horse, her movements like lightning, one hand holding the iron head stick horizontally in front of young Master Zhao's horse's neck. The horse was abruptly stopped in its tracks and stood up. He Yan pulled the reins and shouted. Shoo! The horse quieted down. The wind blew, rolling up the white veil on her face. In a glimpse, the woman's face was revealed. It was only for a moment, but it was quickly covered by the white veil. Okay. She said to the man who was crying on the horse's back. You can come down now, young Master Zhao. Woo woo, woo woo, young Master Zhao started to cry. Chapter 15. The sobbing young Master Zhao wiped his tears with the back of his hand and cursed softly. When he got off the horse, his legs were weak and he almost fell. The servant quickly went over to support him and said, young master, are you okay? Young Master Zhao kicked him. Do I look like I'm okay? You scared me to death just now. He Yan said, it's all my fault. If I didn't insist on having a horse race with young master wouldn't have been frightened. She was very apologetic and sincerely apologized. I hope young master won't take it to heart. Mind? What could he mind? The other party was his savior, how could he mind? Young Master Zhao forced a smile, but he was still holding back his anger. He looked at the main culprit's mount, which was still chewing on the grass with its head lowered. He was furious and waved his hand, this traitorous beast, it almost caused this young master to be injured. Drag it out and behead it. I'm going to cut him into pieces and make him into dried horse meat. He Yunxing frowned, and He Yan's smile became cold. Horses, for a general, were not only a mount, but also a comrade who went through life and death together. They couldn't speak, but they would carry soldiers and charge into enemy lines. They couldn't communicate, but they would whine sadly after their master died, and even go on a hunger strike. They were loyal to their master, just like how their master loved them. Young masters from rich lands never understood the cruelty of the battlefield, so they couldn't understand the friendship between a man and a horse. People were divided into noble and lowly. A bastard was not worth his hesitation. If he wanted to kill it, he would just kill it. Why should he care about other things? This is a good horse, He Sui said. He advised, young master, you should think twice before you act. This is this young master's horse. Young Master Zhao had nowhere to vent his anger, and He Sui just bumped into him. He sneered, I can do whatever I want. He pulled out a dagger from his waist, and said, I'm not only going to kill it, I'm going to kill it here. The hilt of the dagger was inlaid with a pigeon egg-sized ruby, and the scabbard was made of gold. It was gorgeous. Now, the tip of the knife was pointed at the horse that was gnawing on the grass. The horse still didn't know that its master had the intention to kill it. It swung its tail leisurely. Young Master Zhao's eyes were filled with killing intent as he thought of a good idea. Since this horse had frightened him and caused him to lose face, he might as well kill it right here and now. Firstly, it would help him vent his anger, and secondly, it would show off his bravery and regain some face. He shouted at the servant, catch it for me. He Yan's palms moved slightly, unconsciously his hands reached for the iron cudgel on his waist. She could not see the horse die because of her. There was no reason for him to make a move. The horse was held down by a few manservants. The head manservant turned his head and shouted, young master, we are holding it down. Young master, do it now. Young Master Zhao held a dagger in his hand and walked forward. He aimed it at the horse's neck, and the dagger was about to land. Bang! There was a crisp sound, as if metal and stone had collided. Something fell to the ground. He Yen quietly withdrew his outstretched hand. The dagger in young Master Zhao's hand had already fallen. Young Master Zhao was holding his wrist and crying out, "Io, Io." Who is it? He stomped his feet in pain and did not forget to curse, "Who the hell flicked me?" "It's me." Someone's voice came from behind. This voice. He Yan's heart skipped a beat, and he turned around to look. He did not know when two people had appeared behind him, and they were both riding on horses. The young man on the left was wearing a licorice yellow robe with a round collar and slanted lapels. Such a provocative color made him look extremely lively. His lips were red and his teeth were white. He was smiling brightly, and his eyes were clear. There was a rare childlike innocence in him. He was a young man in high spirits. As for the young man on the right, He Yan's eyes lit up. It was spring. The willows were new, and the ice and snow had melted. In the city of spring, there were people parting the flowers and brushing the willows. The young man in yellow was already very handsome, but this young man's eyebrows and eyes were even more beautiful than him. His face was like a beautiful jade, and his eyes were like stars. His eyes were gentle, but they were slightly raised at the end, like the reflection of autumn water. It was a good color that could stir people's hearts, but because of his gaze, it was as cold as ice. He was not as lively as the young man. He wore a silver crown on his head, and his black hair flowed down. He wore a frost-colored riding suit, and the lapel was embroidered with an exquisite vermilion bird with golden thread. He wore a pair of soap green boots, and a sparkling sword at his waist. The white horse was golden, and he was handsome and elegant. At this moment, his right hand was playing with a dark green pouch, and there was a tinkling sound coming from inside. What a handsome and elegant young master of the 5 Hills aristocratic families. He Yan was praising him in her heart. Suddenly, she felt that something was wrong. In a flash, she lowered her head, and the white veil swayed slightly, covering her eyes. She only heard young Master Zhao's flattering and fearful voice, "So it's military governor Zhao. I'm sorry." He Yan suddenly remembered that many years ago, it was also a spring day like this. Orioles sang and swallows danced, and willows fell in 1,000 courtyards. She looked up in confusion, and saw a handsome young man in a white robe and embroidered boots looking down from the treetops. Even though his expression was full of impatience, it could not hide his handsome appearance. The spring light was lazy, and the wind was beautiful. He was like a jade in a painting, dimming the spring scenery of the city. Xiao Ju, Xiao Huijin, her rival in her previous life, and her former classmate. He was also the famous military governor of the Right Army, General Feng Yun. Chapter 16. He Yan lowered her head as the wind blew the white veil on her face. Beside her, she heard He Yunsheng suck in a breath of cold air. He seemed to mutter in a low voice, "Commander Xiao." It was probably because he saw the hero in his heart that he exclaimed in admiration. "Military Governor Xiao. Why are you here?" Young Master Zhao was arrogant in front of He Sui and the others, but in front of Xiao Ju, he was like a dog wagging its tail and begging for mercy. It was disgusting. "How much did you spend on this horse?" The young man sat on the horse and asked calmly. "Huh?" Young Master Zhao was a little confused, but he still answered honestly, 30 taels of silver. Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. In the next moment, 2 silver ingots flew out of the dark green pouch in her hand and landed on the grass. Everyone could see clearly that the thing that hit young Master Zhao's wrist was a silver ingot. I'll buy your horse, he said. Young Master Zhao's lips trembled, but he couldn't say anything. He wanted to save his face by killing this ruining beast, but unfortunately, Xiao Huijin had spoken. He was the second son of a Xiao family. He couldn't afford to offend him. Young Master Zhao could only swallow his anger and smile. Military Governor Xiao, what are you saying? If you want this horse, I'll give it to you. No need, he said, I don't deserve it. He Yan sighed in relief. Xiao Ju was a general like her, so she couldn't bear to see someone kill a horse in the middle of the street. When this horse met Xiao Ju, it managed to avoid a calamity. Just as he was thinking about this, He Yunqing suddenly stepped forward. He looked at Xiao Ju with a face full of admiration and said, "Thank you, General Feng Yun. Saving a horse's life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda." Amazing. He Yan was speechless. Even if He Yunqing wanted to strike up a conversation with his hero, he shouldn't have said that. How could he say such embarrassing words? He should have said to study more, otherwise he would end up like this. Xiao Ju was laughing at him. However, Xiao Ju did not say anything sarcastic today. Instead, she turned to look at He Yunqing. Her clear eyes sparkled like stars as she asked, "Do you like this horse?" He Yunqing glanced at it and answered honestly, "I like it." "It's for you," he said. "Thank you." He Yunqing was shocked and was about to say something when he saw that Xiao Ju and the yellow-clothed young man had already urged their horses forward. He didn't want to stay here any longer and could only chase after them for a few steps before stopping and looking at their backs disappointedly. He Yan walked up to him and waved his hand in front of him. "Are you back to your senses?" He Yunqing retracted his gaze and turned around. "Where's Xiao?" "He left long ago." He Yan rolled his eyes, as if he couldn't stand He Yunqing's silly look. "When you were looking at second young Master Xiao." Even if young Master Xiao was unwilling, he didn't dare to cause trouble for Xiao Ju. He could only take the money and leave angrily. He Yunqing walked up to the horse that was abandoned by its owner. He touched the horse's head as if he was caressing a lover's keepsake and said, "This was given to me by General Feng Yun, then why don't you bring it back and worship it? Set up a memorial tablet?" He Yan asked. He Yunqing glared at her. "What do you know? If Military Governor Xiao didn't pass by just now, this horse would have been killed by that Zhao guy. Military Governor Xiao is indeed a young hero. When he sees injustice on the road, he pulls out his sword to help." "Stop, stop, stop." He Yan interrupted him. "Say something else." She thought that He Yunqing was indeed a child who didn't know the evils of the world. Xiao Huijin wasn't a chivalrous hero who saw injustice on the road. This person was very heartless. "Yan Yan, why did you come out wearing a veil?" He Sui, who hadn't spoken much, finally found a chance to speak. "Also, how did you know how to ride a horse? Father was scared to death just now. You can't be so reckless in the future. If something happens to you, how can I explain it to your mother in the future?" He Sui spoke much more to He Yan than to He Yunqing. "This is my recent makeup. It's a trend in the capital to wear a veil when going out. It looks mysterious and beautiful." He Yan spoke nonsense seriously. "Father, do you think it doesn't look good?" He Sui, "Good, good, good. It looks very good." He Yunqing rolled his eyes. He Sui actually believed such a clumsy excuse. He Sui naturally believed it. He didn't know much about these girls' playthings. He only knew that He Yan always liked to dress up. It was natural for her to follow the trend. Moreover, he would never think that his arrogant and weak daughter would go to a gambling den to fight with others. It must have been a mistake. As for riding a horse, I learned it with a friend. I only know a few tricks. I'll practice more in the future," He Yan said vaguely. On the other side, Xiao Ju and the boy in yellow were riding their horses out of the school grounds. It was really interesting just now. The boy in yellow laughed. Uncle, did you see that? The girl on the horse secretly did something. That's why that Xiao guy fell. It was fun. Xiao Ju's expression was indifferent. He did see it. They just happened to pass by the outskirts of the school grounds. The girl's movements were agile. When that Xiao guy wanted to kill the horse, he believed that even if he didn't say anything, she would have done it. Her hand was already reaching for the iron head stick at her waist. It's a pity that she kept her head down. I didn't see what she looked like. The boy in yellow rubbed his chin. Why don't we go back now and ask for her name? Maybe we can see what she looks like. Go by yourself. Xiao Ju was unmoved. That won't do. She looked at you before lowering her head. She must have been shocked by Uncle's beauty and became shy. I think that there are more interesting girls in the capital recently. A few days ago, I saw the girl at the bottom of the drunken jade tower who fought against 10 people by herself. Today, I saw the girl riding a horse at the school grounds. There are so many good girls in the world. Why can't any of them belong to me? The boy in yellow sighed and beat his chest. Xiao Ju looked at him calmly. Qing Li Su, if you don't shut up, I'll send you back to the Qing family. No. The boy named Qing Li Su immediately sat up straight. You're my biological uncle. You can't just watch me die. I'm relying on you now. As they spoke, they suddenly saw a few people standing not far from the weapons rack. The leader was a young man in blue. He was thin and looked like an immortal. He looked at them with a smile. They didn't know how long he had been standing there, but from where he was, he must have seen everything that happened at the school grounds. Isn't this the fourth young master of Shi Jin's household? Qing Li Su whispered. Why is he here? Xiao Ju didn't answer. The horse stopped and Qing Li Su showed his usual warm smile. Isn't this Brother Xylan? Why is Brother Xylan here? This was the fourth son of Shi Jin, Chu Zhao. I was just walking around. I didn't expect to meet Military Governor Xiao and young Master Qing here. Chu Zhao smiled. Are you also here for a walk? Of course. The spring weather is so good these days. Wouldn't it be a waste if we didn't come out to play? Qing Li Su laughed loudly. As he laughed, he muttered, but it would be even better if we came out with beautiful girls. Chu Zhao pretended not to hear him. His smile didn't change. From beginning to end, Xiao Ju didn't say a word to Chu Zhao. She only nodded slightly at him when they passed by. When they passed by, the page boy was indignant. This General Feng Yun is too rude. Chu Zhao didn't care. He only smiled and shook his head. Who told him to be Xiao Huaijin? Then, he looked at the empty track again. He seemed to have thought of something very interesting and chuckled. Chapter 17. He went to the drill ground empty-handed, and when he came back, he had a horse in his hand. Yunqing felt like he was trying to gain something without risking anything. When he thought of this, he quickly spat a few times in his heart. How could this be called gaining something without risking anything? This was a gift from a hero. But that General Feng Yun was even more handsome and elegant than the rumors said. When would he become someone like second young Master Xiao? He Sui looked at Yunqing. The young man's face was full of reverie, and he didn't know where his mind was. It was rare to see him so energetic. He looked at He Yen. Although his face was covered, he seemed to have a lot on his mind. What's wrong with this son and daughter? On the way back, they didn't say anything, each thinking about their own things. Yunqing could say that Xiao Huaijin had given him a horse, but why was He Yen also silent? Xiao Huaijin was young and promising, and he was also one of the most handsome men in Dawei. Could it be that his daughter had taken a fancy to him? What should he do? Young Master Fan had just left, and now military governor Xiao had come. There were countless young master fans in the capital, but there was only one Xiao Huijin in Dawei. When he thought of this, He Sui felt a headache coming on. The three of them returned home with a lot on their minds. Aunt Li, who sold tofu next door, looked at them curiously. She even pulled He Sui aside and asked with concern, "Brother He, did something happen at home? It seems like Yan Yan and Yunsheng have something on their minds." He Sui didn't know what to say. When they entered the room, Qing Mei had already prepared dinner. Everyone was eating porridge. As they ate, He Sui finally remembered to ask, "Yan Yan, why did you come to the drill ground today?" He Yunsheng was fine, but He Yan never came to the drill ground. He Yan collected his thoughts and said to He Sui, "It's like this. Originally, I wanted to tell father that Yunsheng should enter school at his age. The martial arts he learned on a daily basis were not as good as his master's teachings. It's not too late now. Spring is the time to start school. What do you think, father?" He Sui opened his mouth. For a moment, he didn't know whether to be gratified that his daughter was starting to worry about her brother or worried that he couldn't answer He Yan's question. "Yan Yan, I've thought about this before, but right now, I'm still short of some money." He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. "I might have to wait a little longer. When I get my monthly salary, I'll raise some more money." If it wasn't for this, he wouldn't have tolerated young Master Zhao's humiliation. He Yunsheng lowered his head to eat, but his ears were pricked up. He knew that it was not easy for his father to earn money. He always felt that if he brought it up, it would be unfilial of him. He Yan finally said these words that were hard to say, and he let out a sigh of relief. "You don't have to worry about the silver." He Yan got up and walked into the inner room. After a while, she came out with a makeup box. She opened the makeup box. He Sui and Qing Mei were dazzled by the jewelry and silver inside. He Sui's chopsticks fell to the ground. "Yan Yan, where did this silver come from?" "Yunsheng went to Lutong village and won it." He Yan answered fluently. He Yunsheng spat out a mouthful of porridge. He Yan blinked at him. Her expression didn't change when she lied. "Yunsheng's luck is really good. The first time he went to Lutong village, he won a lot of silver. I counted it. The silver is enough for us to use for a few years." He Yunsheng moved his lips, but didn't say anything. What could he say? He Yan said that the person who gambled was him. He Sui didn't believe it. Even he didn't believe it. Moreover, He Yan was wearing his clothes that day. Other people only remembered that he was a teenager. He really couldn't explain himself. Moreover, when he thought of the scene when He Yan stood up for him and raced the horse with that surnamed Xiao, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Just take it as being loyal. He will take the blame for this. He Yunsheng said, "Yes, I won it from gambling. Father, let's take this silver to school." He Sui looked at him steadily. "You won this at the casino?" "Yes. The first time you went to the casino, you won a big victory." "Indeed. Indeed, indeed." He Sui flew into a rage. He slammed the table, picked up a piece of wood from the table, and hit He Yunsheng. "You unfilial son. You actually dared to go to Lutong village. Your father worked hard to provide for you, but you actually dared to go to Lutong village. Do you have any shame? How can you face your dead mother?" He Yunsheng covered his head and scurried away. "Father, it's because our family is too poor. If you didn't tell my mother, how would she know? You're still quibbling. Where did you learn this dissolute habit? Go to the casino." He Yunsheng, "I think you're going to overturn the heavens." He Yan silently shrank into a corner of the room. What a close call, what a close call. He Yunsheng had to take the blame for this. He Sui knew that she was the one who did it. What if she accidentally hit He Sui back and hurt him? Then she would really be an unfilial daughter. After a round of chaos, this matter finally came to an end. In the end, He Yunsheng was beaten up, but he still managed to gloss over this matter. The next step was to consider which school in the capital to choose for He Yunsheng. It would be best to choose a school that had both martial arts skills and skills. It couldn't be too bad or too good. Birds of a feather flock together. The best schools were all for the children of wealthy families. It was inevitable that He Yunsheng would be contaminated with some bad habits. He Yunsheng sat in He Yan's room and tapped the small comb on the table against the lampstand. He said, "I can't find a good school after so many choices. It's really giving me a headache. It's not something that can be decided in one night." He Yan glanced at him. "There's still plenty of time in the future." He Yunsheng curled his lips. "Now that you're experienced and knowledgeable, don't you know which school in the capital is the best?" "I don't go to school." "What do I know?" He Yan said, "I know about gambling." He Yunsheng said, "Then I really underestimated you." He Yan smiled at him. "Thank you for the compliment." Thinking about the beating he received tonight, He Yunsheng felt sullen again. He said, "I'm going to feed the horses." Then he left. After He Yunsheng left, Qing Mei took away the basin for washing up. He Yan blew out the candles, took off his shoes and went to bed. The windows were not closed. In this kind of spring night, she did not feel cold. The moonlight came in through the window and overflowed the table. She looked at the table and thought of Xiao Zhu she met during the day. At that time, she was in a panic. She was afraid that Xiao Zhu would recognize her, so she lowered her head. But later, when she came back to her senses, she was no longer He Yan. Even if they were face to face, Xiao Zhu would not recognize her. Moreover, she always wore a mask in the past. The last time she saw Xiao Zhu seemed to be a long time ago. At that time, he was not as cold and indifferent as he was now. He was an arrogant but undisciplined youth. The best school in the capital was called Xianchang School. Today, Dawei's two famous generals, General Fengyun and General Feihong, both came from this school. Come to think of it, she and Xiao Zhu had only been classmates for a year. Chapter 18. Everyone said that General Feihong and General Fengyun were as incompatible as fire and water, fighting openly and covertly. But in fact, He Yan always felt that it wasn't that exaggerated. At most, they were both young men who joined the army, had outstanding military achievements, and were bestowed by the emperor at a young age. Everyone liked to compare them together. The others were just hearsay, embellished with oil and vinegar. After being passed around, they became unfamiliar books, making people not know whether to laugh or cry. At least in the heart of the 14-year-old He Yan, she definitely didn't have the slightest bit of hostility towards this young master of the Shao family. At that time, she had already disguised herself as a man for many years, and being He Rufei was a piece of cake. There was only one thing that was slightly difficult, and that was that at this age, boys should have long gone to the academy to learn from the teachers. Men and women were different. Women could invite teachers to come to the residence to teach, but men didn't have such a thing. The He family had always invited teachers to teach in the residence, but as they grew older, it wouldn't be good if word got out. In the end, the He family still wanted to save face. Therefore, they dragged their feet and dilly-dallied. In the end, when He Yan was 14 years old, she was sent to the Xianchang Guan. The Xianchang Guan was the most famous school in the capital. The founder of the school was once the current emperor's imperial tutor when he was the crown prince. The school taught the 6 arts, and each teacher was an outstanding person in the imperial court. Those who came to learn were nobles among nobles. Although the He family had a noble title, compared to the families in the Xianchang Guan, they were still slightly inferior. Who knew that He Yuanliang had some kind of good luck? One day, when he was drinking in a restaurant, he came across a dispute and casually said a few words. The person he helped turned out to be a teacher in the Xianchang Guan. He mentioned that it just so happened that there was a new student coming to the school in the spring. He remembered that the He family's first branch seemed to have a legitimate son, so why not send him to the Xian Changguan to learn from him? He Yuanliang hesitated for a long time before discussing this matter with He Yuansheng. He Yuansheng had always pursued fame and profit, so he felt that this matter was feasible. If He Yan was sent to the Xian Changguan, she might get to know a lot of other nobles. Being on good terms with them would only be good for the He family, and there would be no harm. If one day, the real He Rufei returned, the title of Xian Changguan student would be icing on the cake for He Rufei. He Yan was very happy when he heard about this. She dressed as a man, but in the He family, she acted according to the rules of a woman. He couldn't play kuju, couldn't show his face in public, and even had to secretly learn martial arts behind his family's back. However, if one were to say that she was a woman, then she was also incompetent. The daughters of the He family learned the 4 arts, but she, as He Rufei, could not follow them. It was as if he couldn't do anything. However, going to the Virtuous Prosperity Hall was different. It was said that there were many capable people there. Those who came and went were all talented people. There were also many youths of the same age. If they went, not only would they be able to learn some skills, they would also be able to make many friends. This was a benefit that women could not enjoy. She was suddenly glad that she had taken He Rufei's identity. He Yuansheng's wife, her mother in name, and her actual aunt, handed the mask that had been meticulously made by the craftsman to her. She said worriedly, "You must be careful when you go. You must not let anyone discover your identity." He Yan nodded. In fact, she didn't like wearing this mask. Although the mask was light, it was airtight, only revealing her chin and eyes. For so many years, she had never left the mask. She even wore it when she was sleeping. The craftsman was very skillful. One side of the mask was fastened into her hair bun and installed with a mechanism. Even if she fought, it would not fall off. Only she could open it. "Madam," he seriously warned, "remember, if you leak the trap, the entire He family will be destroyed." She knew that these words had been said thousands of times. The crime of deceiving the emperor would implicate 9 generations of the family. "I'll keep that in mind." He Yan replied respectfully. "Madam," he anxiously sent her to the carriage. In the eyes of outsiders, this was a scene of deep affection between mother and child. In He Yan's heart, she was greatly relieved. Her chest was overflowing with the joy of being free. She finally broke free from the days where her every move was controlled. Freedom was in front of her eyes. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall. The servant sent her off the carriage and could only wait at the entrance for her to finish school. She came too early. The teacher had not yet arrived at the school. She could vaguely hear the sound of students reading and chatting. He Yan stepped through the door, full of longing. The spring sun came out early in the morning. After entering the school, there was a large yard first, then a garden, and finally the school. There was a stable in the yard, which looked like a small drill ground. The garden was very elegantly renovated. There was a pond and willow trees. There was also a swing. The wind blew the swing slightly. He Yan reached out and wanted to sit on it, but she didn't dare to. If a man played on a swing, she was afraid that people would laugh at her. She could only reluctantly touch it before continuing to walk forward. The willow trees had all sprouted. Clusters of green flowers fell into the lake, which made the mountain look more beautiful. The sunlight made people sleepy. She rubbed her eyes and saw a loquat tree in front of her. The He family didn't lack money to eat loquats. In these years, He Yan also ate loquats. But this was the first time she saw a loquat tree full of fruit. The yellow fruit seemed to contain honey. It was full and fragrant. Under the sunlight, it was very tempting. She was only a 14-year-old girl, but she was very playful. Seeing this scene, she remembered the scene of the servant girls in the courtyard picking plums with bamboo poles in the summer. It was just that the eldest young master of the He family naturally couldn't pick plums himself. But now that they were in the school, picking a loquat should be fine, right? It wasn't shameful for a boy to pick loquats. Thinking of this, Yen rolled up her sleeves and prepared to go all out. But she came out in a hurry. Other than the bundle, paper, and pen that she gave to the teacher, she didn't have anything else. There was also no long pole around. Fortunately, the loquat tree wasn't very tall. She should be able to reach it by jumping. Yen stared at the nearest fruit in front of her. The fruit was pressed against the top of the branch. It was heavy and golden, as if it was tempting her to pick it. She jumped with all her might, but she missed. Almost. Yen wasn't discouraged. She persevered and jumped with all her might. She still missed. She had a personality that didn't admit defeat, so she tried again. Again, she missed. She failed again and again. She didn't know how many times she failed. Just when Yen was tired and panting, she suddenly heard a sneer from above her head. Yen looked up in confusion. The loquat tree was lush with branches and leaves. She only stared at the fruit and didn't notice that there was someone sitting on the tree. She didn't know how long this person had been sitting here. He probably had a panoramic view of all her actions. She looked up. The sunlight shone down, illuminating this person's face inch by inch. This was a beautiful young man in a white robe and embroidered boots. He looked lazy and arrogant. With his hands behind his head, he looked bright and elegant like a cool breeze leaning on a jade tree. He impatiently looked down. His eyes were moving. Yen was stunned. She had never seen such a good-looking young man. It was as if the whole spring scenery was shining on him. For a moment, she felt ashamed. Fortunately, the mask covered her blushing face. But in the end, she was still young and couldn't hide the amazement in her eyes. After the handsome young man glanced at her, he casually pulled a fruit down. Was he giving it to her? Yen felt a burst of shyness. The young man suddenly turned over and landed on the ground. Yen's eyes were dazzled by his white robe. She looked at the young man approaching with the fruit. For a moment, she hesitated and didn't know what to say. Should she say thank you? Or should she say that you are really good looking? She was so nervous that she wanted to reach out and twist the hem of her clothes. The young man had already walked in front of her. Suddenly, he smiled. This smile was like 1,000 flowers blooming. It was as bright as the spring dawn. Yen said excitedly, "Thank." Before she could finish the second, "Thank you," the young man brushed past her. Yen? She looked back and saw the young man in the white robe tossing the big yellow loquat up and down as he walked forward. His posture was leisurely, as if he was laughing at her unrequited love. Yen stood in the same place. After calming down for a while, she followed the young man into the school. However, she had just walked to the entrance of the school when she heard people talking inside. It was very lively. A cheerful voice asked, "I heard that the new eldest young master of the He family is also coming to our school today. Brother Huijin, did you see him?" She took a step forward and secretly peeked through the crack in the window. She heard a lazy voice say, "I didn't see the eldest young master of the He family. I only saw a stupid and short person." Stupid and short. Yen had never been talked about like this in her life. It was fine if she was stupid, but short. How was she short? Her height, compared to other girls her age, was already considered to be very outstanding. Yen wanted to see which blind person would come up with such a conclusion. As soon as he raised his eyes, he saw the bright and pretty young man who was surrounded by the group of young men. His eyes were nonchalantly looking towards the crack in the window. It was as if he knew that she was peeping. Bursts of laughter came from the school. The world of grass and trees was boundless. Spring was lush and the forest flowers were like brocade. This was the first time she met Xiaoju. Chapter 19. The next day, it began to rain. He Yan asked He Yunxing to take some money to hire a craftsman to repair the dilapidated roof. Spring was coming to an end and summer was about to arrive. The rain would only get heavier and heavier. In the He family's house, only the roof of her house was still intact. He Sui and He Yunxing's houses were filled with copper basins to catch the dripping water. As soon as he entered the house, he seemed to be selling basins. The roof was repaired very quickly. It was made of sturdy blue tiles. He Yan thought about changing the quilts and pillows in the house. They were so torn that he could pull out cotton. He Yunxing stepped into her house and said, "He Yan, come and take a look." He Yan was baffled. He Yunxing took out a piece of paper from his chest and said to her, "Yesterday, I wrote down all the good schools in the capital. Do you want to go and take a look together today?" "Now?" He Yan asked, "You want me to go with you?" He Yunxing's face showed a bit of anger from being exposed. He turned around and said, "I just wanted to let you know." "Oh, okay. I'll go with you." He Yan replied. This young man's temperament was awkward, but he was still cute and didn't have a bad heart. When He Yan walked into the courtyard, he saw the horse that Xiaoju gave He Yunxing yesterday was curled up in a corner. He Yunxing even built a simple stable for it. The He family was poor and couldn't afford to raise a horse. They only raised chickens and ducks in the courtyard. Now that there was a huge animal, it was really strange. The horse was eating grass with its head lowered. The grass was wiped clean and neatly stacked. It was obvious that He Yunxing did it. Seeing He Yan looking at the horse, He Yunxing proudly said, "Xiang Xiang is very beautiful." He Yan almost thought that he heard wrong and asked, "What did you call it?" "Xiang Xiang." He Yunxing answered matter-of-factly, "I saw her yesterday. She's a female horse. Since she's with me, I have to give her another name. Xiang Xiang is a name that girls will definitely like." He Yan. "As long as you're happy." He Yunxing should study more, but He Yunxing refused to listen. Xiaoju was such a picky person. If he knew that He Yunxing had named the horse that he had given away so casually, it would be the greatest humiliation in his horse gifting career. He Yunxing did not notice him, even though he tried his best to hide it. He could not stop feeling happy. He Yan did not feel like paying him any attention. The He family didn't have horses before, so naturally, they wouldn't have carriages. He Yan and He Yunxing walked on the street with umbrellas. He Sui went to the drill ground early in the morning. When He Yan woke up this morning, the bruise on the corner of his mouth last night had disappeared. It was almost invisible, so he did not wear a veil and went out directly. There were advantages to going out directly. Now that her identity was different, she had no scruples, so she could carefully observe the customs of the capital. He Yunxing wrote down a total of 4 schools on the paper. They were all carefully selected. He Yan also looked at them and found that they were all about martial arts. This was also good. He Yunxing did not seem to want to be a civil servant. Of course, since he was able to name the horse Xiang Xiang, he was indeed not cut out for that. The two of them walked and stopped, buying and eating. In less than a day, they finished looking at all 4 schools. He Yunxing and He Yan discussed for a while and decided to find the closest school to their home. There were many martial arts teachers in this school, so the homework was arranged very well. He Yunxing could go to the drill ground to practice weapons on weekdays after school. The school fees were not expensive. It was 1 tael of silver a year. The money He Yan won was enough for him to go to school for several years. Although He Yunxing did not say it, he was obviously very happy. On the way back, he was even a little excited. He Yan passed by a tailor's shop and thought of the day when he tore He Yunxing's clothes in Lutong village. He said, "I said before that I would make clothes for you. Since we are passing by, why don't we do it here? He Yunsheng's clothes were mostly the leftovers from his sui. He had been sewing and mending for 3 years, so there were very few new clothes. He had never been to such a good tailor shop. When he heard this, he hesitated and said, "Forget it. I'll just wear whatever I want. If you go to the school, you will be laughed at if you don't dress well." He Yan pulled him into the shop. The tailor was an old man. He smiled kindly and asked, "Are you going to make clothes for this young lady or this young master?" "I'm going to make clothes for him." He Yan pointed at He Yunsheng and said, "For spring and winter, make 2 sets of clothes for each season. It's best if they are long robes. They should be good-looking and suitable for a young man like him. As for the color, it shouldn't be too dark or too light. The pattern can be simple." The old tailor smiled and said, "Okay. You're not going to make clothes?" He Yunsheng was shocked. He stood up and said, "I can't wear so much. It's too much." He Yan pushed him back into the chair. "Your older sister has more clothes than I can wear. How can you compare with me? You are so handsome. If you don't wear better clothes, won't it be a waste of your face?" He Yunsheng's face turned red. "What nonsense are you talking about?" When the old tailor heard this, his smile became more affectionate. "Young master, your older sister really loves you." Doting on her. He Yunsheng was in a daze. He didn't expect that one day, he would joke around with He Yan like other ordinary siblings. But, she really helped him a lot. She was reluctant to spend money to make clothes for herself, but she made so many clothes for him. He Yan loved to dress up. He Yan didn't know that He Yunsheng's heart was filled with mixed feelings. She was simply not used to wearing He Yan's clothes. He Yan's clothes were charming and delicate. The style was complicated and dragging. She would step on the hem of her skirt and fall down. If she wasn't careful, she would accidentally hook on the edge of her clothes. He Yan wore it in despair. Even when she was the young mistress of the Su family, her clothes were as elegant and simple as possible. Therefore, He Yan's clothes were not suitable for her. Not to mention wearing these clothes to practice martial arts. She thought that it would be better if she asked the tailor to make 2 sets of men's clothes. But she couldn't do it in front of He Yunsheng. Otherwise, she would have to explain endlessly. She would take advantage of the day when He Yunsheng wasn't around to do it secretly. The tailor was measuring He Yunsheng's body. He Yan casually walked around to look at the fabrics. She wanted to see if she could choose 1 or 2 bolts of fabric for He Yunsheng. At this time, someone suddenly called her name. He Yan. He Yan turned her head to look. The person who called her was a young master. He was dressed very luxuriously. His appearance could be considered delicate and pretty, but there were dark circles under his eyes. His gaze was unfocused and he looked a little tired. There were a few servants following behind him. When they saw He Yan turn her head, their eyes lit up. They suddenly came forward to grab He Yan's hand. He Yan leaned to the side and avoided their claws. He Yan's eldest miss seemed to be quite famous in the capital. He Yan cursed in her heart. Why did she see acquaintances everywhere she went? First, it was Wang Jiugui. Now, there was this person. When the young master saw that He Yan avoided his hand, he paused for a moment. Then, his face immediately showed a sad expression. He held his heart and said, "You are still angry with me?" What did he mean? He Yan was still puzzled. The young man who looked like a calf rushed out like a whirlwind and blocked in front of He Yan. "Fan Cheng, you still dare to come?" Fan. He Yan suddenly realized that this was the legendary, young master Fan, He Yan's heartbreaker. Chapter 20. He Yunsheng stood in front of He Yan. Fan Cheng was a little astonished. He Yan and He Yunsheng, this pair of siblings, had never had a good relationship. He had known He Yen for so long, but he had never seen her and He Yunqing appear at the same time. Even if they bumped into each other once in a while, they would be quarreling. But looking at He Yunqing's current appearance, it didn't seem like they were quarreling. Instead, it seemed like he was protecting He Yen. Could it be that something happened that no one knew about? He turned to look at He Yen again. The girl was staring at him. Her eyes were clear and bright, full of magnanimity. There wasn't much affection in them, and it didn't seem like she still had feelings for him. Fan Cheng took another step forward and asked with concern and anxiety, "I heard that you fell seriously ill a few days ago. I don't know if you've recovered. Do you want me to send some tonics to your house? What do you like? I see that you've lost some weight. I'm really worried." This man's appearance was not bad. He was dressed in luxurious clothes and was so earnest. If Miss He was really here, she would have been moved to tears by him. He Yen didn't have time to speak. He Yunqing was afraid that she would be moved by Fan Cheng's words, so he quickly said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. Don't forget who caused you to fall seriously ill and what they said in front of Fan family's door. This person is a liar." He Yen had already heard about this from He Yunqing. When Miss He found out that her sweetheart was getting married, she went to ask for an explanation. In the end, she was chased out of the Fan family's door by the servants. She didn't even get to see Fan Cheng's face. That was why she was so disheartened and fell ill. When Fan Cheng heard this, he secretly hated He Yunqing for being such a busybody. However, on the surface, he was even more sorrowful. This marriage was decided by my parents. I didn't have the right to choose. It's just that you should know my feelings for you. Why should you listen to an outsider's instigation? Who are you calling an outsider? He Yunqing was furious. I'm her biological brother. What's your relationship with her? Don't even think about taking advantage of me. He Yen patted He Yunqing's shoulder, signaling He Yunqing to calm down. She turned to look at Fan Cheng and bowed. Many thanks for your concern, young Master Fan. My body is already fine. I only caught a cold a few days ago. My younger brother is still young, so he spoke carelessly. Fan Cheng didn't expect her to say that. He was stunned and didn't say anything for a while. The past is now gone. Master Fan is now married and has a family. This humble girl shouldn't get too close to you, lest I upset your wife. In the future, let's go our separate ways and not meet each other again. He Yen felt that his words were very considerate and didn't hurt young Master Fan's reputation. He Yunqing also seemed to be very satisfied with her words. He looked at Fan Cheng proudly, as if he was a victorious cockfight. Fan Cheng carefully sized up He Yen. Speaking of which, he and He Yen had met purely by chance. She had sprained her ankle while hiking, so Fan Cheng had tenderly asked someone to give her a ride. In all fairness, He Yen was quite beautiful, but not to the point of being stunning. As a young master of a family, what kind of woman had he not seen before? He Yen only fancied his family background and wanted to live a life of luxury. It would be a waste to not eat a piece of fatty meat that was sent to his mouth. She was a good-looking woman with a clean background. Fan Cheng thought that it wouldn't be bad to take her in as a concubine. Who knew that He Yen was so proud and arrogant that she was aiming for the position of Fan Cheng's official wife? How could he marry the daughter of a guard at the city gates? He Yen was delusional. However, in order to trick her into selling him, Fan Cheng coaxed her and gave her some worthless cosmetics and jewelry to make her burst with joy. Who knew that one day, He Yen would find out that he was about to marry a wife? She actually went to his fan manor and made a big fuss. The official wife he was going to marry was the official's eldest daughter. If the official found out, he might cancel the marriage. As a result, Fan Cheng had his servants chase He Yen away. When he heard that He Yen was very sad and almost wanted to commit suicide in front of his door, Fan Cheng was too lazy to care. After that, he got married and took a beautiful wife into his arms. Everything went smoothly. After the marriage, Fan Cheng's old habits flared up. However, this new wife of his had a fierce personality. She kept him under control very tightly. He couldn't go to the brothels or visit the brothels. He even dismissed a few of his concubines. At this time, Fan Cheng began to miss the delicate He Yan. He Yan's personality was different from his fierce wife. She was so delicate that water could drip out of her. Although she would occasionally throw a tantrum, she was still very cute. Fan Cheng sent someone to inquire about He Yan. He found out that after He Yan left his Fan manor, she fell seriously ill. When she woke up, she didn't often go out alone. She and her younger brother would occasionally go to the Drunken Jade restaurant to sell large cakes. He didn't expect to bump into her here today. He Yan seemed different from before. She didn't look at him with the same fawning and charming expression as before. She was so magnanimous that it surprised him. She still had the same facial features, but she seemed to be full of vitality. She also seemed to have a heroic spirit that she didn't have before. It was this heroic aura that made her beautiful face stand out. Even the polite smile at the corner of her lips made it hard for people to take their eyes off her. It was as if she had been reborn. As expected, you're still angry with me, Fan Cheng said sadly. He was certain that He Yan still had feelings for him. She used to like him so much. How could she let go of him so easily? As long as he apologized like before and gave her some gifts, she would forgive him. This kind of woman, after saying a few sweet words and swearing to the heavens, she would be dead set on him. He Yan didn't know what Fan Cheng was thinking. She had already said it clearly, but Fan Cheng didn't seem to understand. She turned her head and asked the old tailor, "Have you finished taking my measurements?" The old tailor nodded in agreement. "This is the down payment." He Yan put the silver on the table. "When will it be done?" "In 20 days, you can pick the spring and summer clothes. The winter clothes will take a little longer, around a month." "Okay." He Yan smiled. "We'll pick it up in 20 days. Please make it more beautiful." She pointed at He Yunsheng. "Children love to be beautiful." "Who loves to be beautiful?" He Yunsheng flew into a rage out of humiliation. The old tailor smiled but didn't say anything. He nodded in agreement. He Yan and He Yunsheng walked out of the tailor's shop. They only nodded lightly at Fan Cheng and didn't say anything else. Fan Cheng wanted to say something, but the young girl had already walked away. He Yunsheng turned her head and secretly waved her fist at him. Her eyes were full of warning. "Ha!" Fan Cheng sneered. "Young master, madam, he treated you this time." The servant was indignant. "It's fine." Fan Cheng waved his hand. "She's a woman. She's just throwing a tantrum." Today's He Yan was very different from the past. That unapproachable appearance really made one's heart itch. Fan Cheng suddenly remembered that he had spent so much time on He Yan, but in reality, he didn't gain any advantage. How could he let the duck that was already in his mouth fly away? Since they met here today, why not continue their previous fate and achieve something beautiful together? Fan Cheng revealed a confident smile. "You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."